a net utility might like infringe on like an individual person's like rights, for example. How do you personally account for that?
Yeah, I don't think rights are that intrinsically exist. I don't think those are well founded. I think if you like believe rights are intrinsic things, you will wind up in a bunch of like weird circumstances. I can run through that some of those things in a second. But no, this is stupid. No, you should be able to engage with the hypothetical. You should be able to engage with the hypothetical without me giving a background of the world where I say, oh, in this scenario, your bomb is super complex, so it takes twice as long to disable. These other two bombs are rudimentary. Like, I can give that background if you want. Like, here's the issue: is that I'm for aborting all non-vegans. Okay, that's the real. So part of the issue. So like this, like generally, like again, I'm going to sound insane. Okay, if we're talking about my personal philosophy, this is why I appeal to modest premises.
That's a little bit insane.
That's mostly, just to be clear, so that's mostly ironic for anyone who fucking clips this.
Okay.
So the actual position is, folks, liking and subscribing really helps me continue to produce content and is greatly appreciated. You can also make sure to check out my Discord server in the description below, where you can also find my Twitch, my Kick, and my Twitter. I, in DMs, like, just like listed a number of things that we probably disagree on, because I think, for the most part, we probably do agree on things. We're both relatively or centrist within our own party, so a lot of times either we're like on the same side talking against MAGA or fighting our respective like ends of more populist ends of the party, right? And I think that the two you said you were most interested in talking about were abortion and utilitarianism, the two things I discuss like least often. So I don't know where you.
Wait, do you not discuss utilitarianism that often, or was that sarcasm?
I don't think I discuss it that often. I mean, it's like going to be incidental to almost anything. I've talked in
your chat with you before about this.
A little bit, I think, yeah.
But I swear we've had this discussion before, so maybe it's just because it's like my own experience. But
yeah, no, it's going to be like incidental to like almost anything you talk about, right? Because it's obviously my base moral framework for thinking about like anything.
Yeah.
But I don't know where we want to start in that, but it's not typically where my streams are focused, I don't think. But I'll let you. I don't know where you want to start.
As much as we like to frame this as like a big debate or something like that, I think this is really just gonna be more of a discussion than anything. Like, I don't think we're gonna be like name calling each other or anything like that.
Oh, you ain't. But yeah.
Oh man, am I gonna get mogged again? Second time you're gonna defeat me in a massive debate. If anyone doesn't know, it was 2024. I forget what month it was. You completely mogged me, and this is a free will debate.
Real, yeah. Oh, like long time ago. Yeah. So I don't know what topic you want to start on, and then I don't know within it where exactly.
Let's just start with the utilitarianism, because that one's a little bit more.
Sure.
I just want to poke your brain about it a little bit.
Okay.
How do you define utilitarianism?
I would just say a moral philosophy that is primarily concerned with the outcomes of things, the consequences of actions. That's concerned with the view its actions as right or wrong based on whether or not they cause an increase or decrease in like net utility and total happiness. I mean, there's different types of utilitarians who will value different things, but that's probably what it is.
Okay, so yeah, net increase. Hold on, I got notes. I'm gonna be right.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing I would say, so like I would say like I'm
or
sure,
or like productivity.
They're going to be utilitarians who value different things. So I would say I probably have like 80% credence in what I would call just broadly consequentialism, which is just being concerned about the consequences of actions and judging their morality based on that, rather than sort of whatever rights people want to say exist or whether or not they conflict with some other like principles or whatever. And then I probably have maybe 50% credence. I've never looked that far into this, into what's called hedonic utilitarianism, where I only care about.
Oh boy.
Well, I'm a hedonist. I care about sort of happiness and pleasure and pain, essentially just pleasure minus pain. There are other utilitarians who would say, oh, I also value other things.
How do you define happiness exactly? Like, what is the definition for a net positive happiness versus like a net negative? That's
technically
I'm curious on how utilitarians judge that.
Right. Well, there might be some who are a little bit of disagreements about that too. But basically, like I would just say, to get a little bit more fundamental, like I'm talking about what I would call like positive qualia, right? So I think like there just kind of is such a thing as like experience of sentient experience, both in humans and in animals.
Okay.
They're just like, it's a thing, it's probably immaterial thing that exists within minds. And some of those experiences are positive and some of those experiences are negative. And like, you're primarily gonna, like we all have our own like lived first person experience, obviously, but we're primarily gonna have to rely on sort of self-reported feelings and statements from people when we like try to determine what exactly is like a positive experience and stuff, right? But it's any like experience, qualia, subjective experience that something has that is like overall pleasurable, positive.
By pleasurable, you mean like dopamine or something like that?
Well, I mean, it's going to be like
Well, yeah, I'm just
so that can be that can be what causes it, but the thing itself
the meme
is
of like someone where it's like they have like all their arms chopped off, and it's like they're like hooked into like the VR machine that has like heroin, like their brain or something like that. Like, I feel like you could justify that with like utilitarianism of that being like technically positive, right?
Well, you could.
Because
so yeah.
like
so if you are,
it's like the AI version of like maximum amount of dopamine or maximum amount of like chemical good juices increasing.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what you're referring to, like the name for it or whatever is like the experience machine. Now there are like consequentialists. Like you can be a consequentialist and not hold that to be like a good thing or whatever, because you could say
are you a consequentialist or no?
I'm a consequentialist, but within consequentialism, there's different types of people. So
like
some people again, so like some people will say the only thing that doesn't matter is just a hedonistic like pleasurable experience or whatever. There's also other things like maybe personal autonomy like matters as well, and we should value that too. Maybe relationships matter intrinsically as well. I have not I've not like done a ton of reading. I've not considered those super heavily, which is why I like would probably only put like 50% credence in hedonism or whatever. But like, yeah, like it's not what do you say, like dopamine or whatever. So again, like the sort of experience itself
is like any sort of chemical brain juice that would
I was gonna say like that's a thing, like that would be an example of a thing that could cause positive qualia, but that like isn't actually the positive qualia itself. And there are probably I don't know how other animals' brains work, but there are probably like other animals whose brains don't produce dopamine when they're happy. They produce some other neurotransmitter or whatever stuff. But I think
okay, so you say it brings happiness, right? So how does utilitarianism cope with the fact of like gambling, for example, right? I can make a moral judgment and say that gambling is not good for like a person, right? Like they lose their money, they're going to be stuck in like an addiction cycle. But while they're gambling, while they're at the casino and they win that pot, that increases their happiness, right? And that small increase of happiness might be worth more than like the overall detraction. So how does you
should just be concerned about the long term, the long term consequences too. Obviously, like that's, I mean, all those things you mentioned are just things that are. From that person's
perspective, they might think that gambling is like the best thing for them, right? So how do you
in the
come
moment,
from like
so you can think there's nothing incompatible with like a person believing in the moment that some bad decision is going to be good for them, and that decision not actually on net over time being good for them. Humans like make mistakes like that all the time. Obviously, gambling is addictive. The human mind is just sort of prone to being addicted to certain things, to overeating, things like that. But it doesn't change the fact that obviously like you should be concerned about the long term consequences too. You should. I'm just wondering
how you deal with the objectivity of it. Like who is determining like what is good and what is bad.
Right. Again, so the good and bad, like the thing people within consequentialism, within utilitarianism might have some disagreements over what counts as good or bad. The thing as a hedonist, like I would say, like the positive and negative experiences themselves, the qualia, or the things that are good or bad. There are going to be other people who draw different things into that. So for me, for the qualia, again, when you say like who determines it, well, the qualia, the subjective experience is all like a subjective firsthand experience. The experiencer is kind of the one that determines whether any individual given experience is good or bad. And then we're going to have to rely on sort of their account of events or whatever, or we can interpret from other. Like, obviously, if I see someone like crying, their leg is broken, I can interpret without even talking to them that they probably are not having a positive experience right now. So like, I would say, like, you know, we're going to kind of have to rely on that to determine what is like positive and negative qualia. And like, obviously we can say like gambling, even though it causes like fun feelings in a moment, and that's why a lot of people do it, in the long term, typically it's going to lead to things that are going to have make you have worse experiences later on. You're going to be more stressed because you can't pay your bills. You're going to potentially have strained relationships because of that as well. Things of that nature that are going to be bad for you.
Okay. How do you specifically? You talked about like some people might having like some sort of rights that the I guess you called it like the net positive or whatever. What do you say that you had a very specific term for that?
I think I said net utility. That might have been
net utility. When a net utility might like infringe on like an individual person's like rights, for example. How do you personally account for that?
Yeah, I don't think rights are that intrinsically exist. I don't think those are well founded. I think if you like believe rights are intrinsic things, you wind up in a bunch of like weird circumstances. I can run through that some of those things in a second, but like I would just simply say the way I view rights generally, both positive and negative rights, because they're liberty. You know, I'll disagree with both the leftists who would say, "Oh, healthcare is a human right, intrinsically good" or whatever, and the libertarians would say like, "Oh, actually, only negative rights exist, only freedom from things exist or whatever, personal autonomy." But I view them. I think these are useful.
Right? It's like something given by like.
I don't believe they're. So the way I view them, I think they're useful heuristics, right? So
okay,
I don't think like it's sort of like is the case, or I don't think like morality is based on these sort of like individualized rights we have to your body, to your own body, to speech, to healthcare, if you want positive rights or whatever. But I think these are like instrumentally useful in the sense that like society just seems to work better. We tend to have like less corrupt governments if we like grant these rights to people, you know. And like no human, I also think that you're always going to have to account for like uncertainty too. So like, you know, maybe it is the case that I'm trying to think of a better example, but well, I guess you could say like maybe it is the case that like you believe, or you have like some good reason to believe, like if you were to go out and like murder someone tonight, like that would plausibly like prevent 2 murders or whatever. But typically, like we don't want people behaving in society that way, because we don't like individuals are not going to be super well equipped to make those decisions a lot of times. So it is sort of useful to have these like useful heuristics. It's useful to have a Bill of Rights. It's useful to have these things, and it's useful for people to even behave as if morality is based on these things oftentimes. But I don't believe intrinsically they are the thing that matters. I think when people try to say intrinsically they matter, they're the way I like to put it, they're overfitting a fitting heuristic. They're confusing a useful rule for morality itself.
If the individual is not responsible for, like you say, a person who thinks that they're going to prevent 2 murders by committing a murder shouldn't go out and commit that murder because they can't see the larger picture. Who then is I'm doing these actions? Or sorry, maybe I was misinterpreting what you said.
Kind of. So the point I'm saying is that a lot of times we have these like rules or whatever because like we want society to operate in a certain way, and you know we don't think that like individuals, for example, are going to be the ones best equipped to try to stop crimes. We want the government itself. You know, we believe the government itself through some public police force is probably going to be the best way to prevent crimes or whatever.
So it's like through some sort of like rule set we can determine that it's not like
we create rules, we create useful heuristics, because we want society to operate in a certain way.
So if someone is able to like prove, like objectively speaking, that I guess giving up like individual privileges, like freedom of speech, and let's say like your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you know, the American one proposition. If someone is able to prove that by taking away those things, you're able to create a net utility benefit to society, like more like a Chinese system, I guess. Would you then support that sort of system if someone could like prove that?
I mean, probably like
even
if you were like
infringed on like your own like individual like freedoms and rights.
I mean, like if the question is just if someone was literally able to prove that the expected value of doing an action was positive, then yeah, I'm committed to saying do the action that has the expected value that's positive or whatever. I think the only again, it feels like a lot of times when people do things like this, we're confusing fitting heuristic for morality itself, or overfitting a fitting heuristic. Like generally, just a whole lot of sort of counter examples to utilitarianism or whatever kind of fall into this bucket where you say like, let's imagine an action that violates some like generally utility promoting law or generally utility permitting norm, and then we'll say we'll just stipulate for the sake of the hypothetical that contrary to all the evidence historically and everything, somehow this action is guaranteed to be good for everyone, right? Somehow it's going to be super great, and then we say like, oh, well, that's really unintuitive that utilitarianism would say that, and it's like, well, of course it's unintuitive because everyone sees historically like what has happened when you've done this and everything. Like everyone recognizes the value in the rule in the actual society. It's just because this hypothetical stipulates that someone is somehow like able to prove this. That's the reason it's unintuitive. And I think most sort of counterexamples just fall into that bucket.
Wouldn't that require like almost like a hindsight sort of view of like interpreting the world?
Well, for what exactly?
You cannot what I'm saying is like you can't objectively know like whether something is going to be 100% perfect. How are you making these judgment calls?
So, yeah. I mean, for one, if the claim, is simply that like because there's so much uncertainty, you can't do like any type of utilitarian calculus. I'm not actually like you could just say like, well, in that case, like even the utilitarian action there would be to sort of behave as if these are like. It would be to behave according to useful rules, to heuristics, to rights that we set up, even if we don't believe those rights are, like actually intrinsically good. The action a utilitarian is going to take is just going to be the one that maximizes expected value. If expected value is maximized by simply adhering to deontological principles in practice, then you could just do that. But secondly, like obviously, you can just look at the evidence of how things have worked historically, and like you should weigh your actions based on how like confident you are that they're going to happen. Like I would rather sort of like obviously you should rather do something that has like a 50% chance of saving 1,000,000 lives than like a 100% chance of saving one life, right? Like it seems like you should just sort of weight the actions based on how strong the evidence is either way and determine what has the higher expected value based on that.
Okay, Chipringo's in my chat right now, and he's spamming me and asking all these questions. So,
of course,
I'm gonna shotgun them towards you, and we'll see if you can answer them. How do we calculate differences in utility, even if we grant that there is no global scale?
Even I don't know what we mean. Even if we grant there's no global scale, so I mean for differences in utility,
like,
right?
Say, so like a communist would say like GDP is not a good example of like determining like how large an economy is. Like they might say like, a service economy isn't a real economy. You need to base it off of like how well you can like produce something in like a factory. That like might be more like a Marxist view of the world. So they judge their scale of like how important something is in the world is different than from what your scale. So how do you find an objective scale if everyone takes different scales? I guess. Is it just
right?
Like
well, again, so the thing I refer to, that I want to maximize is like positive qualia, positive experiences or whatever. I don't think like anyone like seriously denies like that just kind of is a thing that exists. Now there are, going to be issues with measurement, especially because, again, it is like a firsthand subjective thing or whatever. But like obviously, we can infer reasonably from our own experiences and from how people behave when you do certain things to them, whether or not that creates positive or negative experiences. And, there are always going to be issues with exactly quantifying, especially when it comes to animals too. I mean, technically you could be utilitarian and not care about animals, but like, like how many negative experiences of a cow is worth one negative or positive experience of a human. But like, I think it's much more beneficial to like make our best guess at that, look at all the evidence and make our best guess, and maybe like weight it by how confident we are, how good is the actual evidence as well. Than it is to just say, well, we don't know, we can't know for sure, so like I'm just not going to think about it. Like, you should just make our best guess.
Okay. How do you calculate utility based on predictions given unknown outcomes?
I mean, you just wait. I don't know exactly what it means by unknown like outcomes. So like again, you look at the evidence that we have for doing X action, and you consider what would happen if I did it in this case, and you should again like weight by like how good the evidence is. So, you know, if doing I'm trying to think of a better example or whatever, but like I don't know, if like doing single payer healthcare, suppose that like there was only one study on it and it did not have a very good sample size. Well, that's not like very strong evidence, so you shouldn't like weight it super heavily. So the expected value might be lower because there's not super strong evidence that doing it is good. But like if there were a ton of studies all over the place that had like super big sample sizes and had a bunch of good causal inference variables, showing that single payer healthcare was good, like, you know, then that's a lot of strong evidence that doing it is good. So the expected value of doing it is probably pretty high.
So is this how you determine everything that you do is just based off of like a previous outcome, I guess? Or like how do you account for innovation
you look at the
in this worldview?
How do you account for what
because
exactly?
Sometimes when you're doing something like new, right, you're not going to have any background information. In fact, all background information might go against what is new because it's an unknown variable.
The net they're going to be
to like humans might be, well, you don't want to do anything new because if you do something new, that might cause something bad and that might bring down your net utility. So,
well, people might
be better to just not do it at all. So I'm wondering how do you account for that?
Well, people might have like biases or whatever, but you know, I mentioned historical evidence, but obviously there are other types of evidence. Like you can just you can just deduce things. Like, you know, it is the case. Like, you know, even if I have never, I'm trying to think of it. You know, even if I have never stabbed someone or something, like, you know, I can deduce from other people stabbing. Or, well, I guess that's historical still. But like, I can imagine like hypotheticals where I do something totally new to someone, but like obviously I still could clearly foresee that it would cause negative experiences within someone. Like there are going to be other types of evidence that you can think of even for like new things. And I think obviously to a large extent, like a lot of institutions kind of already do that, but
okay. Let's see here now. If I know I'm guaranteed message from the future and parentheses to win the lottery, should I play?
Yeah, then you should donate all the money to a shrimp welfare project.
Of course.
I mean, you should do it if the expected value is positive. So, like, presumably, if like we have very good reason to believe, you know, if you won the lottery and then donated it to effective charities, that would be much better than a person who won the lottery and didn't do that. So, yeah, you should probably do it.
I think I've already talked about this before. Like the oppression of like the minority for the sake of the majority. Did we go over that already?
Kind of maybe a little bit, but like, you know, again, it's going to kind of fall into. How do you
account for that? Like let's say like 51% of the world. Okay, let's say you could benefit the 51%, like exactly 51%, very greatly, like exponentially more than you would if you like let them both be together. But you, in response, you have to bring down the 49%. How does utilitarianism account for something like that?
So, like, if you're just presupposing again the expected value is positive, then you should do the thing that has the expected value that's positive or whatever. But again, like, it's just gonna fall into the same thing of like, well, you know, let's imagine an action that violates the norm that we all recognize is good in the real world. Like, it is good. Well, almost everyone probably recognizes in a real world, like it is good to treat humans equally. Like it is good to not discriminate against people, to not have slavery, because historically, you know, we've just seen that's been very bad for people. Like obviously, we could see if that was done to us,
well,
that would cause a lot of negative.
Utilitarianism, there's no inherent thing of like being good or bad for people. It's more about like the net positive utility or the net positive like to
Well,
society.
again, but
right?
it
So
doesn't
let's
stop
say
me
if
from
there's, like,
recognizing
5%,
like
let's say take 5%, for example. Like, imagine
Mhm.
if there was a study that was done with like good evidence showing that 5%, we treated them like absolute dog shit. Like, we treated them as basically slaves. And we could exponentially increase the quality of life and utility of the other 95%. Then wouldn't utilitarianism like say, well, then that's what you should do. You should just
if you're just
completely
like
trample on,
again,
on the 5%.
if you're just saying the expected value doing it as positive, yeah, utilitarianism is going to hold that you should do the action that has the high like expected value being positive, but that doesn't prevent you from saying as a utilitarian, even if morality itself is not based on intrinsic rights existing, there just kind of are rights that it is beneficial to grant, or things that it is beneficial to behave as if they are, they are the case or whatever. Again, these are useful heuristics. These are rules that then we observe in the real world are good for us, right? So it is unintuitive when we say
that they were good for society, right? Like, that's the reason why we have these rules. Is there some sort of net benefit to society? But I'm saying if
I'm saying
society
everyone
was able to
overall.
prove, well, like everyone overall, but I'm saying like as a whole, you might be able to see some sort of like societal improvement by shitting on completely like the 5%, right? Then
No, I understand
wouldn't
that's
care about the rights of the 5%. So
well, I understand
obviously we're going to what you were
the
talking about before, like, oh, what happens if we have a theoretical scenario in which this specific
right. Again, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is like, again, I'm going to hold that like if you just presuppose the expected value of doing the action as positive, you should do that action.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think that like there are arguments I can get into for that stuff. But again, this is just something that like we have like a important law and norm in most of the world saying like it is good to treat humans as equal. Like, this is just obviously it's going to be unintuitive when you say, well, what if we violated this, but somehow hypothetically it was good? I recognize it's unintuitive, but I think it's mostly just unintuitive because, essentially because like we recognize it is like useful in the real world. I think we're confusing a fitting heuristic, a fitting rule for morality itself. And like I would just say like, so like one argument I like to use, like if you essentially, if I were to tell you like you're going to be, you're going to be a collective entity, basically. You're going to, at one point, live the experiences of every single person. For the sake of this example, I'll just say person, but animals you could do as well. But you're gonna at one point experience everything that everybody experiences, right? Like in that world, in that case, if you were that collective entity, if you were importantly an impartial entity, someone who presumably would care equally if you're going to live everyone's life at one point in time, as much as presumably you would care about all those experiences, at least individually, equally. Like, you would, in that world, you would want the 5% to be endlessly shit on, right? You might, because even though you would have to live as the 5% whose lives are being shit on, you would experience more benefit from it, because you would also experience the life of the rest of the 95% who have like exponentially better lives than those 5%. Living as the 5% would just be the equivalent, the equivalent for you of like, oh, I got to go to the gym and like work out a little bit, which hurts in a moment, but like is good in the long run. So if you are a collective entity that truly valued everyone's utility impartially, you would want the 5% to be shit on.
Yeah, that's sort of. Have you ever watched House MD?
I have. I love House MD.
You love House MD, so you're familiar with the whole thing of House with his leg, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He has an infarction in his leg, and they're wanting to cut it off. But he wants to save the leg because he like really likes his leg. I'm going to use this sort of analogy for what I'm about to argue. Let's say you're about to die, or at least suffer very greatly because like of a infarction in your leg, and the optimal outcome for like your happiness, I guess, is to cut off the leg. Well, as the whole, sure, you can say, well, yeah, it's better to just cut off the leg. Like fuck the leg. The happiness of the overall outweighs the individual body part. But if I'm the leg, like me as the individual, I'm the leg, I don't want to get cut off. I would argue like against that. I would say, like, oh yeah, saying, you know what? Sorry, it's probably best if you don't like shit on me. If it's probably best. Wait,
what are you saying? You're saying if you are the leg,
individual. Yeah, if I'm the leg, it would probably feel like really.
If you are the leg,
shitty,
or if you're the individual who has the leg.
No. If I'm the leg in and of itself, like me as like the individual.
Well,
let's say like
I mean,
I'm like a cell, and I'm like a part of the leg, and I'm getting like cut off. I want to like die.
I mean,
right?
cells aren't.
It's a probably
so
bad metaphor. But.
In this hypothetical, well, obviously, cells are not. They're not conscious beings on their own, at least.
It's a metaphor, yeah. Like if I was a cell, I probably would, if I had like a voice, I probably would argue against not getting my leg chopped off, right? Because I want to. Like,
but in the collective entity hypothetical, like you would know, like and again, like we're supposing this hypothetical that like you do have free will and you're controlling it, everyone in these cases or whatever. In the hypothetical where like you knew that you were going to live everyone's life at one point, you were going to experience everything at one point or whatever, you would just do the thing that had the higher expected value. So like you would, if legs were conscious in this example, you would only
a collective. We are individuals, so it's a very hard hill to swallow.
So the point of the collective entity
that gets shit on, basically.
The point of the collective entity argument or whatever is to recognize that, like, for a lot of these counterexamples to utilitarianism, if you were really valuing everyone's experience equally, everyone's utility equally, you would support the utilitarian outcome because, like I said, if you were the collective entity that supported, that had to live everyone's experiences at one point, you would do the things which you expected to be positive overall, right? You would only cut your leg off if you believe, like, if you somehow were the person in a leg, you would only cut the leg off if you believe that the happiness from cutting the leg off to you would be greater than the detriment of when you had to live as the leg, dying or whatever the fuck happens to the sentient leg at that point.
We'll say all of them die, or all of them experience, I don't know, they get frozen and dissected as a cadaver. I don't fucking know what happens to cut off leg. What do they do with cut off legs? I wonder.
I don't know. I think
they just like toss it in the trash.
I'm pretty sure they either burn them or they they have some bio landfills, I'm sure, for some stuff.
Wouldn't it be useful to like keep the leg for like students for like to dissect it?
Oh, they might do that sometimes, but I imagine a lot of the
could you imagine you're an amputee and you get your leg cut off and they freeze it, and then you become a medical student, and then you're like working on your own like leg that was like cut off. That would be. I would kind of guess a lot of the legs they get or whatever are in pretty bad shape. So I don't know how many they probably
could use, but yeah,
actually, I guess they wouldn't be in bad. They wouldn't be in bad shape. I would assume, because if it was in bad shape, then what would be the point of like studying them?
What? Well, I'm saying like of all the amputations that they get or whatever.
You mean like the leg in and of itself has like a problem, like, that's why they're amputating it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying, yeah, or like I would imagine, I don't know the percentages obviously, but I would imagine like a significant number of amputations are things that are like, some person like got in a car crash and like needs immediate surgery, and not like this arm just has like a tumor in it and needs to be cut off so it doesn't spread or some shit. Like, but yeah, I would imagine a lot of the stuff they have to amputate is like completely destroyed and not useful for teaching. But anyways, okay. I want to run
tangent.
Yeah. There are all these counterexamples you can throw out there. I think again they kind of most of them fall into that the bucket I explained, and I think if you just I think for a number of them, if you either say we run the collective entity argument, you're going to have to eventually live as everyone or whatever. It becomes a lot more intuitive to do the utilitarian thing, or if we have like a Violate ignorance thing, it becomes a lot more intuitive. Like people give, speaking of medical stuff, people give like the organ harvesting thing as an example as well. They say like, oh, should a doctor kill one patient to save 6 or whatever, or to save 5? If there's nothing wrong with the first patient or whatever, and it's like that's unintuitive to some people. But like obviously, if I were to just say
under utilitarianism, would you argue to kill the one patient to save the 6 or 7?
So we're 6 or 7. The issue is again the organ thing,
a greater number than the person you're killing.
Yeah. So the organ thing falls into both of these buckets, right? So for one, we recognize like in the real world, it is just a utility promoting norm to say that like people get like treatment at the hospital, sort of like there is triage, obviously, to some extent, but people get treatment at the hospital and we don't kill people just as, for the purpose of saving others or whatever. Like the argument would be like, if we didn't have that norm as a society, probably a lot less people would go to hospitals. Therefore, like, it'd probably be a detriment overall. If we just assume that it is the case that, like, the doctor never gets caught or whatever, and this doesn't cause any public distrust in hospitals, blah, 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 then, we're back to this, like, first bucket of saying, well, let's take an action that just is utility promoting, usually, and say, for some crazy reason, it doesn't actually promote utility in this case. Isn't it crazy that this is unintuitive? No, it's not that crazy it's unintuitive. You would expect it to be unintuitive because people in the real world don't, it's just not it is a utility promoting norm in the real world. But then secondly, to get back to this or whatever, if I were to tell you you were going to live the lives of all 6 patients, presumably if everyone lived good lives, you would prefer the case in which you lived 5 good lives than the case in which you lived only 1 good life. And if you're going to live as the families as well, you prefer to live in the world where only 1 of your family members dies as opposed to 5 of your family members dying. And the last thing I was going to get to here, if I were to tell you that if we put a veil of ignorance on and say, you are going to be one of the 6 patients in this case, what would you prefer the doctor to do? In that case, it's quite obvious you would prefer the doctor to kill the 1 patient to save the 5. That gives you a 5 out of 6 chance of living. So, all those things makes it more intuitive.
With that. Well, I'm going to push you on this a little bit more.
Oh boy.
Let's say there's a scenario where a doctor kills a patient in order to save his 6 other patients. All right.
Mm-hmm.
He kills the 1 healthy patient to save the 6 unhealthy patients. And you're a police officer, and you're investigating. You're investigating this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Under utilitarianism, wouldn't it be better to not report it and not investigate it, because that means that people are going to be more trustful of hospitals? There was already a net positive of like people, so the law shouldn't even be enforced for like murder.
Well, again, it's gonna come down to
it would lead like to a net positive, because then if you throw that guy in jail, then he's obviously gonna have like a worse quality of life, even though he like had a net positive to like the 6 people. So the police officers just shouldn't do anything in that utilitarian scenario.
It's gonna be the same thing of like, it's obviously a utilitarian. I think we're confusing a heuristic that it is good for law officers to be impartial and to do, be transparent and stuff, like, generally speaking, for like somehow morality itself, it's just being like intrinsically good for this stuff to happen. Again, it's just going to be like, we recognize this is just a utility promoting norm or law that exists in societies that's good, and we're just supposing through some crazy hypothetical that it's not good in this case. Yeah, I will have to hold, obviously. Like, I'm happy to hold. Do the action with the expected value being positive. Again, if you were to be a collective entity that had to live the experience of the police officer and also everyone else who, would maybe not go to hospitals because the police officer reported on it and it came out and caused public distrust in hospitals, you would prefer the police officer not tell people. So, like, I do think if you make that consideration, it is pretty intuitive. But it's not surprising that at first glance, it is unintuitive, considering this is a utility promoting norm that exists generally.
Now, you call it a utility promoting norm. Wouldn't utilitarianism not require any sort of like norm or like tradition? Because wouldn't you take everything by case basis? Why have norms and traditions? Why have norms and traditions at all?
So the actions,
why not go like a case by case basis?
Like, so the individual actions themselves, like, are going to be like, the only thing I'm basing whether things are good or bad based off of is just at the end of the day whether the expected value is positive or negative. But obviously norms and rules can promote people like generally taking like actions which have an expected value that's positive. And like, again, because there's uncertainty, because we don't trust individuals to do things, nor should we probably trust individuals to do things a lot of times, it's probably generally good to have like a, even if we could obviously imagine examples, and, there are obviously going to be examples of this, where someone murdering someone would be good or whatever. It is just good that society operates in a way that doesn't promote murder, that has consequences for murders, because that prevents a lot of bad murders from happening as well.
I think I would get what you're getting at.
Yeah, but then
it sounds like
I
don't know. I still don't see like the justification for like any norm or tradition to exist in a utilitarian framework
because the expected value of having them is positive.
You say like the overall value
the expected
is positive, right?
Yeah.
But the societal, what do you call it? The collective value is overall positive compared to the individual net value being negative. Sometimes I feel like I'm just gonna bounce this off you. Sometimes I feel like when we have things like rights, for example, like I'm a believer in like natural and like intrinsic rights. So
Sure.
what I mean by that, like every human has like a right. This could be in the abortion debate, so get ready for that. Every human has like a right that they're born with. I say born with figuratively, not literally. Again, getting to the abortion debate coming up. And I feel like those rights, while they might seem like they promote some sort of like overall societal like benefit, sometimes they don't give like a societal benefit. That the benefit of like the individual might not have a benefit to the overall society. But we still maintain those rights anyway because that's just like what is good for the individual. I don't know what better way.
So I can and I do want to get into some of my objections to rights, but again, I do recognize, I believe rights are a generally utility promoting thing, and when people talk about rights, it seems here's what I would say broadly is that rights seem to be reducible to utility consideration. So in our world, we don't believe that we have a right not to be looked at or whatever. But if there was some alien species, some alien planet we went to, and being looked at caused like immense amounts of suffering for them, I think it's very likely that they would imagine themselves, I guess I would say, that they have a right to not be looked at, right? That looking at someone in that society would be a moral wrong. That is a right you have that someone else cannot transgress upon. I think that's kind of broadly the case for most of the rights we talk about. Even for both for like the sort of individualized rights of like just self-autonomy, like self-ownership, and some people lump private property into that as well. And then just the rights, I guess, guaranteed to us in the like Bill of Rights, for example, like freedom of speech and stuff like that. That is a utility promoting thing, generally speaking, which is why we have them. But I don't think there's anything intrinsic there.
You don't. Could you argue? You're not a believer in like any sort of like deity figure, are you? You're an atheist.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think about it too much. I would say no. But I was
gonna say, like, if you were like if you believed in some sort of like greater entity, I guess you could argue that.
Right.
You could argue from like a deist perspective that that there's like God-given rights, but if I don't know if I can come at that argument if you're not a believer in anything.
Not really. I mean, no, I don't think so.
Like, do you believe
I guess
in any sort
so.
Of, like,
here's
do you think that there's like an objective morality in the world at all?
I'm not sold either way on that. I would need to read more. But like here's
if you I feel like it's a lot easier to believe that someone has like natural rights or like intrinsic rights if you believe in some sort of like objective morality, some sort of morality, like universal morality that we can through like logic and reason are able to like get closer towards.
Well, I mean, people so
like discovering, I guess, yeah.
Well, yeah, it might be. What's funny is that like we have people who like believe in rights or whatever, like deontological stuff. Like we have evidence that tends to just be like more emotional thinking. There's a good way to interpret this evidence,
and there's an emotional guy.
Yeah, right. There's a good way to interpret this evidence, and there's a bad way to interpret this evidence. But like, there's we have studies of like people who get like brain damage that like makes them less emotional, but like doesn't influence their cognitive ability, and like they become more utilitarian once you do that. So, I mean, you could interpret that as just saying, oh, people with brain damage are utilitarians. But if you, you know...
Wouldn't utilitarianism be more, like, you can argue that there's, like, a logic and reasoning to it, but wouldn't that be more of an emotional thing, where it's, like, you're concerned about the
I mean...
you could say, like, the emotional well-being of a whole.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, the evidence suggests that people who, like, typically judgments of people who, like, think about rights more often, like, tend to be like more emotional or whatever, like that tends to be based on emotion, like reflexive emotions and stuff. We also just have evidence, like when people like just think about a question longer, like the more utilitarian they get, basically, which is, you know, it's just more evidence that like a lot of the deontological sort of principles are like more emotional things. And again, I think it's
well, I'm saying it's like utilitarianism can also be very emotional, though, right?
Obviously, yeah. Obviously.
Like, let's take the Shrimp Welfare Project, for example. You say that shrimp are the most harvested, however you want to say it.
Most farmed,
animal.
Yeah.
They're the most farmed. They die very painful deaths, and that triggers the empathetic emotional response in which you want to save the shrimp, basically. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of arguments.
You can justify that with like data, I guess. But like saying,
no,
like,
I mean, I think a lot of arguments generally
good, but that's more like an empathetic argument, right?
So a lot of arguments generally are just going to try to appeal to emotion, and I think for morality that makes even more sense, because I do think like our intuitions have probably you know, some basis, some evidence for, you know, morality in many cases. So, you know, like obviously I'm gonna, like when I do this from Welfare, I will try to appeal to people's emotions. And when I'm discussing moral topics in general, like I'm going to try to make things intuitive and stuff. But like, I mean, that's part of the reason, like I'm giving, you know, some of these arguments to make utilitarianism more, you know, intuitive in cases where it's not intuitive at first glance, like the organ harvesting stuff, like the leg example and stuff like that.
Okay, here's another thing I'm going to ask you. Do you think that certain perspectives matter more than others? And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, would a human entity, like the happiness of a human entity, outweigh the happiness of, let's say, like 100 shrimp, for example?
So
how do you judge that with like a utilitarian perspective?
I mean, there might utilitarians will kind of disagree on that too. Like you can be theoretically, you could be a consequentialist and just only care about human utility and does not care about animals at all. But, you know, I hold that like sort of you know, what I would say is one unit. When I say unit, I'm not saying there is like an objectively quantifiable like unit of happiness or whatever, but I'm just saying like when there is a unit, or like sort of one unit of happiness is equal between a human and an animal or whatever. But it seems like animals just can't experience as much happiness or suffering as us, right? Like shrimp are just a lot less intelligent. They probably don't have the capacity to suffer nearly as much as a human does. And it, you know, it's going to be to some extent going to be a sliding scale between these things, between like human and animals. Obviously, we would expect monkeys can probably suffer more than a shrimp, but yeah, it's hard to quantify those things. But I think you should take care. I think we should look at them.
How would you personally? You say it's hard to quantify. How would you personally quantify? Like, how many shrimp in like my cocktail, for example, is worth the industrialized shrimp farming that you deride against?
Yeah. So I think that there's to directly answer the question, like me, like I rely on mainly the work of the like. I mean, there are people who research these things. There are philosophers who think about it, and there are people who look at like the actual behavior of animals. I rely mostly on the work of people who work at the, I think it's the Rethink Priorities. They look at a bunch of evidence. They have like experts to try to, you know, calculate essentially cross-species utility. There are reasons to like not put a ton of weight behind those estimates. Obviously, like I think not only should you, like when you're doing sort of the expected value calculation for donating to the Shrimp Welfare Project, not only should you consider that shrimp can suffer less than humans, you should also consider that the evidence we have for the amount that shrimp suffer is going to be, it's not like super solid. I don't want to say super solid. It's uncertain, both directions. Sort of the margin of error is big. That's the term. so they could suffer a lot less than we think, or they could even suffer a lot more than we think. So you should factor in sort of the quality of the evidence, the margin of error, when you do the expected value calculations. But I also think that, and it will tie back to some of the stuff I said earlier too about just kind of general like rule promoting norms and stuff. I think that I think you should, to some extent, you should live your life as almost like as a virtue ethicist, or like you should live your life. I kind of think the way like you should go about eating animals and stuff, this will generalize a little bit too, is just kind of to develop a strategy that like wouldn't have you like supporting child marriages or like slavery if you were alive in the like olden days. Because I think if your approach is just like, I'm kind of going to hear out the arguments on both sides, and I'm just going to kind of side with whoever I think has like a sort of a stronger case here or whatever. I think if you use I think if you use that strategy and like you were plopped in the 1960 or not 1960 1860s or whatever, there's a pretty good chance that you would find yourself
1 century off. Yeah,
exactly. Supporting slavery in that world, right? Or even earlier, for like you in ancient Greece, people had nuanced arguments for slavery. I think you should develop a strategy that's much more broad. That just says like, it's kind of just it's wrong to cause large amounts of suffering for relatively trivial benefits. And I think if you use a strategy like that, you would find yourself both not eating animals today and not owning slaves back in the day as well.
So then how would you account for, let's see, like cows being a domesticated animal, right? Like a cow can't really survive out in the wild. It requires constant human care in order to, I guess, survive. Maybe I'm just uneducated on that. This is the way that I understand it. How do you account for the fact that like if we weren't farming these animals would probably go like extinct?
Right. Well, so that's a
or if we stopped consuming these animals, then their populations might shrink drastically. Like
right.
I think
cow, I want to be clear.
Like the second most populous like animal on like the planet, and if we like stop industrialized farming them, that they would probably shrink to like maybe just like a couple thousand left in like the entire world. So how does
I just want to get the question I'm answering, or I answered that with was like someone asked, or like you asked kind of like how do we account for like these things when we're so uncertain or whatever, right? It's like how should you I forget the exact question that started this whole thing, but I went over to cross species utility, and then I said like you should make your best guess, you should look at the evidence and sort of say kind of what what we believe how much we believe shrimp to suffer, how much we believe humans to suffer, and try to do those, and you can try to do those calculations. But also just generally speaking, to live your life, the question I was answering is sort of like, how do you live your life, in this way? And I said, you should develop a strategy that would sort of, that has you being, not owning slaves back in the day. And I think a lot of the times people have strategies for thinking about morality that would lead them to owning slaves back in the day, or supporting child marriages and stuff like that. Well,
in this example, it isn't necessarily about like, it isn't necessarily about like owning slaves. It's more of like, I don't want to use the slave argument because it might sound racist, but as I said, cows can't like survive on their own.
No. Yeah, so we're just about to get that. So, but I'm just saying,
like,
I'm just saying
stewardship. So
no. I want to address that. I want to address that, but I'm just saying the question I was answering is not there's an objection to veganism along those lines, obviously, but the question I was answering it was not the like it was not like a argument in favor of veganism necessarily. I was just simply saying to live as a utilitarian, you should develop a strategy, like because we're uncertain about things, you should develop a strategy to live like this, and that's in line with utilitarianism. You don't have to have super advanced mathematical calculations to do every action like this. But just on the kind of veganism point or whatever, I mean, for one, I think the case is even it's more clear if you're a utilitarian. Like if you just care about net suffering or net net utility, I think it's pretty clear that like most animals in factory farms especially just live like horribly negative lives, like net negative lives. Like it is not good for them to come into existence. I think we all kind of intuitively like if you just had a situation like or I mean you could do dogs as well, but actually I'll give the dog example in a second. But like if we like just came across in the wild or something, like we saw like some factory farm for babies, all right, we would not say like, oh well, we just can't shut it down because then like there won't be any more babies bred. It's like, well, no, we shouldn't bring about a bunch of suffering in the world just because that suffering wouldn't exist if they didn't exist. Like, no, suffering is bad. You should get rid of suffering. And I think like just sort of more generally, like I don't think anyone would say like if a dog breeder was abusing his dogs and he said like, I'm only going to breed dogs conditional on me abusing them, we would not say, oh, that's you can continue to breed dogs then. Okay, we would say, no, stop breeding dogs because it's bad to make dogs that only come into the world to suffer, right? Like that's just a horribly immoral thing to do.
Now, I'm gonna counter argument for that. So wouldn't it make more sense to just like bring populations down to their bare minimum and then just like maximize that very small populations like absolute happiness instead of trying to take care of like a massively large population? How does utilitarianism address?
Are you just doing the? I might not know. Are you just asking the repugnant conclusion? Basically, I might not quite understand what you're asking.
Actually, it's like.
Are you saying would it be better to have like a small but super happy population than like a much larger?
Yes. Would you rather have like a smaller super happy population or like a very large but like probably much less happy population just because it's unable to like
just whatever the total utility is higher in is what I would hold. Like if you had like a, like the repugnant conclusion is this idea like it's sort of supposed to be like a reductive, or if you had like a bunch of people whose lives were like barely worth living. But like the total utility in this world or whatever was like 1 million. Like that society would be better because there was more total utility than if we had like a very small group of people. Like if we only had 100 people, but they had really, really, really good lives, and their utility was only 9,999,000, right? Like I would accept the repugnant conclusion. I would hold the society of people with lives barely worth living is better. But again, like this ties back to the argument I made earlier. I think if I told you that you were going to live, you were going to be a collective entity that experienced everyone's lives at some point, you would accept the repugnant conclusion too. If you had to live everyone's lives, you would accept the utilitarian outcome. You would be the utilitarian. You would want to live.
This is more of like a collectivist argument. I don't know, but
no. I'm just saying that the
experience. Well, by collectivist, I mean like taking things more of like as a whole instead of like accounting for the individual.
Because I think
you can argue like a theoretical on which you can like account for the whole, and you can say like sure, like if I was like everything and I had the ability to like experience all like consciousness like ever. Have you ever read the Isaac Asimov Foundation series? You ever read that?
No.
Are you ever planning on reading it? I might spoil.
I have not really heard of it now.
Okay, this is a bit of a spoiler. There's this planet in the Foundation book series called Gaia, and basically it's like this planet, and they're like all psychically linked with each other, and the whole thing is like like the whole planet is like a single consciousness, and it all like leads to one thing.
Well, I just want to be
I suppose if like
point,
something like that
the point
existed,
of this hypothetical,
which, if something like that existed, I could like understand your argument. The problem is that we're not. One can never like come to that perspective, objectively speaking. It's always going to be like a hypothetical. So,
well, I understand it's going to be, but the point of the hypothetical is to make it is to like make it impartial. It's to realize like if you were an impartial being that like valued everyone's utility equally, you would in this case like accept the repugnant conclusion. Like that's one of the hypotheticals to get you thinking impartially, to get you thinking like valuing everyone equally.
One
basically,
would call impartial, and the other one one person could call it impartial, but another person would call it ruthless. Like,
I mean, yeah, you can. I guess I don't know. It's not intuitive that it's ruthless to me.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. Maybe I'm just too stupid to get the unintuitive nature of it.
Real.
I don't think.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying, like yeah. Well, okay. So I do want to run through on like the rights thing that we have touched on a few times. So I think.
You want to talk about rights?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there would have been so if I had more than a day to prepare for this, I would have gone through my notes more.
I was really expecting to talk about rights with the utilitarianism argument.
Obviously, I'm gonna
yeah.
bring out my problems with them, obviously. But I think so again, I think rights act as like a useful heuristic that are like, you know, generally good things, but they aren't morality itself. I think when people try to say they are morality itself, they're overfitting that fitting heuristic. I think if you accept rights, like are in existence, sort of are like intrinsically valuable, especially depending on how much you kind of weight them, you run into a few different issues. So I think I want to pull up. I think I had them like listed somewhere, but or I had a blog post that listed some of them. The one I remember the most is humorous paradox of rights, but like generally, it's going to sort of generalize to like there are going to be cases where basically like an impartial third party observer would kind of hope that you do the wrong thing, and there are going to be cases where like deontology kind of has hard times dealing with accidents. Like if you like accidentally flip the switch on the trolley problem, like would it be good to switch it back? I think deontology has a hard time dealing with cases like that. And there was one, so the one I'm most familiar with that I want to run through real quick at least is humor's paradox for weak deontology, basically. So if you accept like rights exist and they, you know, are like fundamental things, if you kind of accept the premise that like it is wrong because people have rights to harm someone for a comparable benefit to someone else, i.e. like it would be wrong to stab someone, an innocent person, to prevent two people from getting stabbed. If you hold that that's wrong because of because people have rights, I think you run into an issue with this hypothetical. So if we suppose Mary's working in a prison and there are two prisoners that are being unjustly tortured. Both of them are strapped to devices that inflict pain by just sending electrical current, you know, through their body. The first question I would ask, if there was a dial that reduced both of their suffering, right, that just turned the electricity current down, should Mary turn that dial?
You say turn both of them down?
No, there's one dial right now.
There's also one dial, but it turns the electricity for both of them down, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Then turn down the dial.
All right. Now we're gonna imagine there's two dials. So dial one.
This is like doctor ethics. I feel like.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Saving one patient, saving the other patient.
So yeah, dial one, and this I have a table here that has the numbers because this is sometimes it's hard to imagine, but dial one, when you turn it, it's going to increase the amount of electricity running through prisoner A, but it's going to decrease the amount running through prisoner B by twice as much. Dial 2 is going to do the opposite, so when you turn it, it's going to increase prisoner's B torture level by lowering A as twice as much. And just, so the point of this, if you turn both dials here, I can send you the table or whatever, because you're...
I'm having trouble like visualizing this. Yeah, here.
Yeah. I sent it. I
don't want to accidentally leak our DMs.
No worries. I sent the table in general in my server, but like you can see, you know, before you turn any dial, they're both at 100.
Chat GPT.
What?
This. Oh, it looks like.
Oh, the screenshot I sent you. That's from my Notion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a table I made in Notion. So before you turn in dials, they're both at 100, whatever units of electricity make the most sense, amps or volts, I don't know, I'm not an electrician. Once you turn dial 1, you're increasing prisoner's A's electricity by 25. He's now at 125, but it decreases prisoner's B's by twice as much, so he's now at 50. Now, once you turn dial 2, you're going to decrease prisoner's A's by, or no, you're going to decrease prisoner's B, you're going to increase prisoner's B's by 25, so he goes from 50 to 75, but you decrease prisoner's A's by twice as much, so he's down to 75. So you can see, at the end, after turning both dials, they're both at a lower level of suffering, right? They are at, they went from 100 each to 75 each. Because once you turn both, you're doing like the multiplication of the, to a lower number, right? So it's going to bring their, suffering down on net. But obviously, if you sort of believe in rights or whatever, presumably, like it would be wrong, if it is wrong to stab one person to prevent two, or one innocent person to prevent two other people from being stabbed, it would also be wrong to turn dial 1 because you're increasing prisoners B suffering. Well, even if you are giving a comparable benefit to, prisoner A, and the same would hold for prisoner the second dial turn. But you already accepted that if there was only one dial, it would be good to turn them. So it's very weird. It's very unintuitive to say like whether or not the action is moral here would depend on.
The problem with a theoretical scenario like this is that it assumes that there's always like a binary choice in which having a right will always benefit one side and will always like deride like the other side. I just don't think you can necessarily apply that to real life. Like, sure, you can say like in this theoretical scenario, like, yeah, rights.
Well, I mean, I think no
matter what you do, like you're going to be violating the right of like one person or another, because you're either going to be increasing the pain of one or right. That's the whole point.
Well, it's obviously a hypothetical that you might say maybe there's not many cases like this in the real world, but I still think the hypotheticals are like relevant, and certainly it seems like you gave me hypotheticals that are probably not going to generalize to the real world very often.
Like if you were applying to like a right situation like this, you would just say, oh well, you just don't have like I don't know if this is necessarily cheating or not. I would just say, well, you just don't engage with it to begin with. You remove the people from the electric chair as they're like getting tortured, like that's the whole point of like rights, like remove people from the bad situations so you don't sometimes where you don't have to like choose one.
Well, I mean, but you already,
like one or the other.
We've already said like if there was only one dial, so you recognize well, I would have sounded like straight like, do you think would it be morally permissible for her to turn both dials one after another?
You say turn both dials one after another?
Yeah.
Probably not. No.
But so we recognize like in this hypothetical, at least, maybe you don't want to say it generalizes to the real world.
To like dial 1, right? Because that's like you're decreasing the pain of 1, but you're like hurting another person. So it'd be best just to turn to dial 2.
Well, no, I'm saying she turns one after another, right? Like she's turning dial 1 and then turning dial 2. So both, and like again, the relevant thing here is that
does she know?
Does she know what the dials do?
Does she know that turning to dial 1 will increase the pain of one and decreasing the pain of the other?
Yeah.
And the only way to get to dial 2 is to go through dial 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she could turn. I get like it doesn't matter what, or like you could turn dial 2 and then turn dial 1.
Go to dial 2. Then wouldn't that just be like the objectively just like better thing to do?
No, well, I mean, you could turn dial 2 and then turn dial 1, right? But the relevant thing here is that
why would you turn to dial? Well, like if you knew what both scenarios would lead to, why not just turn to dial 2? That just helps both individuals.
No, when you say okay. So I'm saying there are so there were two dials. There's dial 1. I think you're misunderstanding a little bit. So when I say there's two dials, right? There's dial 1 and dial 2, and then there's also there's like there's two actions she's doing, right? So I'm not saying she just goes to action 2. Obviously, action 2 would be what I said earlier, where there's simply one dial where she can turn, and that reduces both of their suffering, right? The point of this hypothetical is that there are two actions, when taken individually, seem to violate people's rights, but lead to a reduction in suffering. Like it'd be good if we just viewed it as, if you just simply view it as one action, that would be good. If there was only a single dial, it'd be good to turn. But now there's two dials, it's for some reason bad to turn. And like the principle that violates.
Wait, why would it be bad to turn dial 2? Because isn't that net benefit both?
Well, so after
okay, so if getting shocked is considered like a violation of the person's rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
well, if
argument.
you hold that it is wrong to unjustly torture someone, increase the amount they're being unjustly tortured for a comparable benefit to someone else, you would obviously hold, and I think you said this, that turning dial 1 is wrong because you're increasing prisoners A suffering and increasing prisoners B. Decreasing prisoners B. And then dial 2, once you turn it, is just doing the same thing backwards. It is increasing prisoner B suffering, relative to after you turn the first dial. And it's decreasing prisoners A suffering by twice as much for a comparable benefit, right?
Okay. Then
so just to be, I can send.
Okay, both are a violation of that person's rights, but you can have like a pain reduction thing where it's saying like turning to dial 2 would probably be better, like morally speaking. But it doesn't matter. You aren't like
because
like
there's
one
a
person's right and like
well, hold on, I can send you
another person's right.
I can send you the paper from, but I just want to
say like the thought experiment. Maybe
I can't. There's a principle he gives out here, right? He's saying there's these two principles, which I think everyone would accept. Sometimes I think people might post hoc try to reject them, but I think
who came up with this? I'm gonna write this down so I can go over this sometime.
Yeah, I can send you. It's not this paper isn't very long, and then there's a lot of other much longer stuff that has more general objections. But so I just want to read out to you, like the thing I'm talking about here. There's two wrongs. Okay, these are the two formal ethical intuitions or whatever. If it is wrong to do A and it is wrong to do B, given that one does A, then it is wrong to do both A and B, right? So if it's wrong to, I'm trying to think about. I think he gives actually an example in here, but I think obviously if it's wrong to do something because it violates someone's rights, and it's wrong to do the second action after you've done the first action because it also violates someone's rights, then you should hold that it's wrong to do both. It is wrong to do both A and B.
I don't know. I might just be like too fucking sleep deprived in order to like get this, but my brain is right. Thoroughly broken right now. So hold on. I'm looking at this table right here on the PDF that you sent me. The A1 minus 1 plus 2, A2
plus 2 that doesn't
1, then A1 plus A2 plus 1 plus 2. Is that what you're
so that table
referring to?
No. So that table's a generalization of it. I think he says I think he says in that paragraph above, like, this problem generalizes as long as you can demonstrate whatever effect here happens. The table I have is like, it's showing the same thing. It's just more intuitive with the numbers I gave and the stuff I gave than it is with the table he has. But the thing I'm referring to at the very start or whatever, because we were talking about the sort of wrongness of turning both dials or whatever. He lays out the two wrongs principle. If it is wrong to do A and it is wrong to do B, given that one does A, it is wrong to do both A and B. And then I think actually before that he says, individuation and independence. Whether some behavior is morally permissible cannot depend on whether the behavior constitutes a single action or more than one action. So basically we shouldn't, it seems rather silly to say like, turning one dial would be good, but like turning both dials or one dial after another would be bad. But like, if we just kind of looked at the action, like if we just assume that like the action of turning both dials was just one action, like Mary does one action of turning both dials, then it would be good. Like that seems entirely like arbitrary and silly. So consequentialism, I think that's a very natural way to do it. And like you could also, he doesn't go through this in the paper, but like something
but this doesn't seem necessarily like correct, right? Because you're coming from a framework of like, if you violate someone's rights and then you if action 1 doesn't violate someone's rights, and you're saying action 2 does violate someone's rights.
No, action 1 in this case is violating.
Plus action
1 is violating someone's rights.
Action 1 violates. Action 2 doesn't violate. If you do
action
together,
2 is violate. Action 2 is also violating someone's rights.
So both of them violate their rights, and together it also violates their rights. So all three actions, no matter what you do,
together. So what do you mean? No, because together, the relevant thing, nor together, it depends on whether or not it like violates the rights. Depends on whether you view like it as two like a chain of separate distinct actions or like one action altogether. Again, if there were a single dial that she could turn, you already said she should turn that dial, and that would not necessarily violate anyone's rights. But because there are two dials, these are two actions if taken individually violate people's rights, but if taken as a whole wouldn't violate anyone's rights. And that's really very silly situation to find yourself in, I think, especially because like I said, like you could even imagine like then would it be permissible like to make it one action if Mary just like somehow physically connected the dials so she could only turn one dial that then turn both of them at like the same time? Like would that be permissible then? Like I think that's it's a situation that consequentialism.
I think I might just be too brain dead right now in order to like visual. I'm a very visual person, so like when you try to describe this, I'm trying to like map this out in my head of like. Well,
yeah, I mean that
create like circles in my head and like Venn diagrams and all that.
That's one objection.
If I like the whole, I'll go look at this later on one of my streams, or maybe I'll just like look it up.
I can send you some of the other. I can send you some of the stuff I have. But like,
those are obviously just
two.
It just doesn't seem very intuitive in my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I think I gave basically like
it
two.
feels like you're trying to say something about like the individual action somehow changes like the ability to like violate someone's rights or not.
Well,
I feel
I'm
like that's what
saying
you're,
in
like-
this example, whether or not the action is moral or immoral, depending on whether or not you take the action as two distinct actions or one individual action that violates the individuation independence principle, which is that, you know, that's just, I think that's just silly to hold that. Whether or not something's immoral or immoral depends on that thing. It depends on that being one or two actions, basically. Because you could find yourself like
I don't see how having two actions in one action would make something like what is inconsistent about that being like immoral and like moral, right? Like if let's say like I help someone, or I like let's say for example I nuke Warsaw, right? That's like technically like two actions, but like one of like collectively together, one
no.
it's
I'm
obviously
saying
worse if you do it,
like
collectively
you
better. It's like a violation of someone's rights.
Again, the example is if you view turning dial 1 and turning dial 2 as two separate actions, it's immoral. If you view turning dial 1 and turning dial 2 as just one action taken as a whole, then you might not necessarily hold it to be immoral the same way turning just one dial wouldn't be immoral. But like consequentialism just has a very natural.
I still don't see the representation that you're trying to do of like the two being seen, turning two dials being seen as one action. I'm sorry, I just can't visualize the why one makes one immoral and why one makes one like immoral or moral. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean that's one objection you should look into. I gave another objection earlier, which is that it just seems generally that rights are reducible to utility. So I think if there were an alien society where being looked at caused immense harm, they would have written in their constitutions, "Thou shall not be looked at without thou's consent" or whatever, right? Like it seems like just generally rights are reducible to utility considerations, and they are, as I've said, like kind of oftentimes instrumentally useful, but I don't think they're morality itself. I think when people try to say that, they're confusing a fitting heuristic. They're overfitting a fitting heuristic. Is the phrase that I stole from a blog post that was really good, which was actually about inequality and not rights, but I've stolen it from my own. Because Autonomy would say inequality matters the same way.
I was not here specifically to talk about like rights as like a general concept, so we should schedule another debate sometime.
Yeah, we can talk. And there's some other
prepared to engage in this.
Yeah. There's some other. Like I said, I was going to prepare a few. There's a lot more objections that I know. I've read blog posts about it and stuff before, but it's gonna fall in I think the other stuff I've seen fall into the general buckets of like you have a very hard time dealing with mistakes. Like if you accidentally flip the switch on a trolley problem, would it be good to undo it? Or I think there's examples of like if you bury a bomb in a park and then like you try to go through and like you regret your decision and like
I would argue that engaging at all in the trolley problem probably considers some sort of murder.
Right, but I mean, it's just saying that the point of the hypothetical is like given you accidentally do this, or like given I think the other example is like given you accident or like you put a bomb under a park. If you're
unconsciously doing something, then what does it matter if it's like it's not like you can give credence to someone's actions if they have like no realization of.
But you should be able to give prescriptions.
It's like the butterfly effect. Like if me doing this right here causes like World War III, then like how much credence can you necessarily give to my action of doing that?
Well, no. So the point of it is like your moral system should give prescriptions, like in I don't want to say any given scenario, but like in this given scenario, certainly, given that you do accidentally flip the switch in the trolley problem, should you undo that action? And I think consequentialism has an easy way out. Just say, well, you should have switched it in the first place. You should just do whatever has the higher expected value, and not switching it back, has the higher expected value. But if you're a deontologist and you hold, it would be wrong to switch it in the first place. Given that you do accidentally flip it, what do you do now?
Is that if you're like aware of like what you're flipping is causing like a change in the trolley problem? Let's hear it out. If you're like already forced to engage with the problem accidentally. Even if you like accidentally engage with it, I think it would still be better not to engage with it further, because you didn't do a conscious decision to do one or the other. So even if you accidentally switched it from like, I guess, one side to the other, no matter where it's going, it's not like you're making a decision to like kill people, I guess. I guess that would be my top of the head response to that.
Sure.
I don't know how you would respond to that.
There were responses to
because you're
it. I'm trying to find. There was a good example.
Because if you accidentally flip the switch and you aren't like making a conscious decision, then it's no different than if the switch was like randomly going like one way or the other, as if the trolley problem never like began. Why does accidentally flipping the switch necessarily change the circumstance of the trolley problem at all?
Oh, I'm trying to find an example to bomb in the park. Chat. Does anyone have the bomb in the park example? I'm trying to find that example.
The bomb in the park example. Oh boy.
It was a bomb in a park example.
Springo says, "Boo! Disengaging is a choice. It is a choice."
God damn it! I'll have to find that shit. But like I think like if you, so I think like it seems at least intuitive to say essentially if you accidentally violate someone's rights and you have an opportunity to undo it, you should probably do that action. So it seems like, at least it seems intuitive to me, at least, like if you accidentally violate people's rights by flipping the switch in a trolley problem, and you have an opportunity to undo it by switching it back, then it's plausible that you should do it. But yeah.
What I'm saying is, if you accidentally flip it, then that's not like engaging with the trolley problem. It's an accident, you know.
Well, do you think like just generally,
here's a better example. Like, let's say you have a trolley problem, right? And you're the train operator, and all day you've been switching from like one or
okay. I don't know. We might be talking about different trolley problems.
Okay,
so the thing, when I say trolley problems, you keep saying like accidentally engaging. I'm just saying like I take you north, okay, and you are just suddenly thrown into a world. This is the only thing that exists in the world, okay. There's no relevant context here, okay. It's just a trolley. There's a track, and for the sake of like saying there's not like thresholds passed or whatever. Currently, it's on track to hit like 2 or 3 people, depending. I mean, maybe you say your threshold is 2 people or whatever. So like, we'll just say like it's on track to hit 2 people.
Obviously, it's more than one. That's the example of the trolley problem is that it
costs but obviously, like like you can be a threshold deontologist. So, like a lot of people would say, like you know, although I care about rights, there was obviously a threshold. So like if there were like maybe even if there were 5 people, I would switch it to run over 1 instead. If there were 1 million people, I would obviously switch it. You know, so but for the sake of like not passing any thresholds, like let's just say it's on track to hit 3 people. If you switch it, it'll, you know, run over 1 person instead, but you know, it'll be you violating you know, that person's rights by directly intervening to murder them. But given that like we say that you have accidentally switched it, so given that happening, you have now, although accidentally, seemingly violated the person on the track's right to not be murdered by accidentally flipping the switch. The question is, should you undo that action now that like you still are in front of it, you have the choice to undo it?
You shouldn't engage with it at all, because you weren't, even if you accidentally switch it from one or the other, that doesn't necessarily,
North, that doesn't, it's not answering my question.
Not the hypothetical choice is a choice.
The hypothetical North
is a choice.
I agree. The hypothetical, which I like, I don't know what you mean by you shouldn't engage with it at all. I'm saying, given that you have accidentally flipped it, first of all, do you accept that like, if you accidentally flip it, do we accept like you just have accidentally violated someone's rights, essentially?
I guess you haven't. I wouldn't give credence to a person if they accidentally like if there was not part of any sort of like negligent, like if it wasn't part of like
you might not, I mean, you may not say
like any sort of like
it's like immoral
fraud or like like literally like just purely accidentally, like it happened, like this.
So you may not say it's like you might not like want to hold them more like culpable or whatever.
Then I would personally I would consider it no different than if you didn't accidentally do it at all. Like, it doesn't matter whether you accidentally
Okay, I don't know.
switch or not. So you aren't no, I wouldn't say that you aren't violating that person's rights if you accidentally flip.
Not even accidentally.
If you're like unaware and like because you're not making any sort of like conscious decision if it's not a part of like.
So I recognize you're not making a conscious decision, but
yes,
like nonetheless, it is true. Presumably, that person on the track
like
has a right.
How much credence do you give to someone's actions by like accidentally doing something?
No, I recognize I would not hold them morally culpable either, right? Like, what? I'm a determinist. Maybe remember this. So like, I'm not even when people consciously do something because I believe like ultimately their conscious decision is also like deterministic. I don't even like deterministic, save for quantum randomness that happens. I don't necessarily hold them entirely morally culpable for that. I'm just saying like. Obviously, I think it seems factually true that if you think that the person on the track, the one person on the track, like has a right to not be killed, you have accidentally violated that right if you accidentally flip the switch.
Again, you're assuming that my accidental action. I mean, I guess you could say like in some sort of indirect way, sure. But it's in an accidental, indirect way. I guess you could say that you violated your right, but you can't necessarily.
I mean, I don't know what you mean by indirect. It is accidental. The point of the hypothetical is it is accidental.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what you mean by indirect. Like you directly flip the switch and now the trolley's going to run him over instead.
Well, because it's like accidental, you aren't making like any sort of decision there, right? So it's not like you're.
Yeah, it's not a decision. That's the point.
Person, like that person's rights will be violated. It's. I guess it's whether you have the. I guess it's whether you consider that person to be like we can agree that person's like not morally culpable, right?
Yes, but they do have an opportunity to undo it. My question is, should they?
If you do like a conscious decision to like undo that and to kill the other, like then you go just back to like the original trolley problem. Like I don't think you bear any sort of like responsibility to make a future decision.
Like if you don't say that you should undo it, you're like implicitly saying like if you accidentally violate someone's rights, you don't have an obligation to undo it. And that seems implausible. That seems silly, in my opinion. Unintuitive.
Well, this is the trolley problem, right? Where you're going to kill much more people?
No, it's not the... So it's not just a trolley problem. Again, it's the point of it is not... it's unintuitive because you're killing 3 people.
Like,
the point of it...
Which one is like more responsible, but like which one is like, are you violating their rights or not?
The point of it is that if you say you should not undo it, you are abandoning what I think is a plausible principle that if you violate someone's rights accidentally, you have some obligation to undo it if you can. You're saying you shouldn't undo an accidental violation of someone's rights. I believe most people would probably
violate someone else's rights.
So you can. It probably depends how you want to view it.
That's what I'm saying. Do you want like a different situation, right? So like I was assuming because it's a trolley problem that I would be violating someone else's rights. So if I'm not violating someone else's rights,
but the question. But this is the.
Then
so this is. But that's the. So part of the issue is I think you get in pretty sticky situations like this with the deontological principles of saying actually it is kind of hard to decide here. Are you violating people's rights? If initially the trolley was going to run them over, you accidentally flip the switch, so now it's not going to run them over. Is it a violation of their rights to then undo your accidental switch and run them over? That's a very sticky situation. I can see like a decent defense of kind of either side there, but I think just the fact that is a very sticky situation where it seems kind of arbitrary whether you decide either way there. Like that's just an issue that consequentialism doesn't have to deal with because you just do whatever has the highest expected value.
Well, I would also say in that situation, it's not like these people are necessarily. Well, it also accounts for things like time as well. Like, does a person really have the time to decide whether like the moral decision of like Am I violating?
I mean,
this
you could
person's
just
right?
assume, like, we could just grant you.
Like,
we
we're
could
gonna say like, oh, there's like 15 years like to decide this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like a hypothetical, I mean, we could live. I mean, you could just grant infinite time. You could just grant like time is paused and it only resumes once you make a decision.
Once you make a decision, well, I think that does. I would say that probably changes something, whether you're able to like think it out or not.
Okay.
Well. If you're like unable to think it out, then it doesn't necessarily matter what decision you make, because it's just like your gut decision. It's not like you're applying any sort of critical thinking to that, right? You're just going off, like, you're not thinking like, oh, what is the greater good in this situation? You're just like going off your gut. But if you're thinking about it, then yeah, I don't think you to correct it. And if you're not like violating someone else's rights when you would normally be violating someone's rights, then I don't know. Maybe I'm just unable to conceptualize.
Well, I guess that I want to run through.
I don't see the bad alternative of not flipping the switch. Like what's the negative of correcting it?
The negative of correcting it is, again, you're abandoning the principle, which seems like a plausible principle. If you accidentally violate someone's rights and you have an opportunity to undo it, that you should do it.
If you violate, you can violate. Okay. You're saying that I'm violating someone's rights by having the trolley coming at them, right? And that you're able to correct it. But if you correct it before that person hits them, then you didn't violate that person's rights, right?
Which person's?
Because they never hit him.
Are you saying if you?
Because like the violation of someone's rights is like them getting killed, right? That's like the theoretical scenario.
Wait, I'm saying if you're.
So if you correct your accident,
no, it seems like
prevent that person from getting killed, then you wouldn't be violating that person's rights, would you? It's a violation of
exactly. No, that's my point. You're correct. Well, you're correcting the mistake. By correcting the mistake, you're undoing your initial like accident of pulling the lever, which is going to violate. I guess if you want to say,
never violated the rights at all if it doesn't actually like go through.
But I guess so like if you want to North, if you want to play, hold on, North, if you want to play that game, all I have to say is if you like, this is just like I guess very silly to say technically like I only consider
it actually like goes through. So like,
sure, okay. So if you want to play that game, obviously I like North you would obviously hold, I would hope so, that it is wrong to cause an imminent violation of somebody's rights, right? Like that, like clearly.
Yeah, like you would want to prevent that, yeah. And if like someone's rights are going to be like imminently violated, and you're
so
able
obviously
to
in this case,
you should correct that. Yeah.
So you just said you should correct it, but we recognize in this in this case, like if you accidentally pull the lever, right? And you're saying you should correct it.
There's a difference between like imminently violating someone's rights and like actually violating someone's rights. Like we can recognize that there's a distinction there, right?
Yeah, I recognize there is a distinction between like about to bring out a violation of someone's rights. I'm not.
Let's take a warrant, for example. Like imagine if the police were going to break into someone's house.
Wait, hold on. I just want to say, I don't know why we're going down to this. You said, just to be clear,
rights. But then if you like stop it from like happening at all, that person's rights were never violated, even though those rights were like being imminently violated.
Unless I misheard what you said that you should undo the mistake.
If you're preventing their rights from being violated, then yeah.
So if you so we accept one in the hypothetical I gave.
If there's no other negative,
if you don't want to say,
I don't see. Okay, hold on. Maybe
in the hypothetical there is another negative, which is that you're going to run over 2 people. Hold on, just real quick. You accept. Okay. It seems I don't know where you're laying on it. Like when you accidentally flip the switch, this is if you don't want to say violating someone's rights. It will cause an imminent violation, like it is an imminent threat to someone's rights because they're laying on a track, right?
Threat. Okay, yeah. But
you have
actively violated. They will be violated unless you correct.
They will be they have You have unintentionally brought about an imminent threat to someone's rights, and you have said that like you should correct that. I want to add like in this case, does it hold that you should correct your mistake?
If someone's rights are about to be violated due to like someone's mistake,
because of your mistake,
they have not been actively violated, but they will be violated. I don't see like I don't see the trap, the bad ending, the wrongness.
We recognize in this case, if you're correcting your mistake, the trolley is going to go on its initial track, which is running over 2 or more people, right?
Oh, okay, well then, what do you think I was talking about before? Like, is there like no bad alternative? As I said, then you're.
I don't know what you were. No, it's not. You made. Oh my god. Wait. So, would you not? Wait, would you? Just to be clear, would you not fix the mistake? You would not.
No. Okay. Hold on. If we're going back to the original trolley problem,
it's not the original. It's never been the original.
Okay, hold on. What are the original? By the original trolley problem, I mean like either violating one person's rights or you're violating 2 people's rights.
Yeah,
right?
that's
and
it.
You accidentally flip the switch, and it goes from the 2-track to the 1-track.
Okay, so the original, right? The original is not
right? That's the example, and you are.
That's the example I gave. I don't consider when you say
accidentally.
Yeah, when you say original
that's
trolley,
your example. Yes, I'm understanding
that is my example. When you say original trolley problem, I don't think of my example. I think of the
misunderstanding or like you were unclear. I thought there was like no 2 people on like the second track. That's what I was trying to clarify before. Maybe I'm just like retarded or something like that. I don't know.
But you recognize if you if you hold that you shouldn't undo your mistake, then you are saying if your mistake causes some imminent threat to somebody's rights, you should not fix that mistake at the very least beyond some threshold of welfare that's going to be harmed if you fix it.
Well, if you fix it, then you'll be violating 2 other people's rights. So you shouldn't engage with the problem at all.
But you don't believe it would be a violation of their rights to have never flipped the switch at all?
To flip the switch it depends if it was purposeful or accidental. In this situation,
purposely. It's gonna be. It's generalized.
So if you accidentally flip the switch initially, then you didn't make a conscious decision to like violate that person's rights. I guess you could say that their right to life has been violated accidentally, but it wasn't.
That the guy's kind of just going to generalize too. I don't want to.
Like, do you think like nature can like violate someone's like rights or not, or like?
That's just going to generalize too, and I don't want to.
Or like if humans are the only things that can like violate someone else's rights.
Kind of. I don't want. We don't have to spend. We don't have to.
Someone's like right to.
Yeah, so we don't have to spend like a fuck ton of time on this, but like I think that there is going to be like a generalization there of like a sort of action versus like an action of omission versus commission. Like what is there a difference between killing and letting die in some cases or whatever, right? Plausibly in some cases, like it seems like it would be a violation of a toddler's rights, like right to life, if they were in a pool and drowning and like you just didn't pick them up or whatever.
Are you looking at the Trapingo message? Would you save a kid who fell in a pool even if you didn't push them in? I was going to say this is literally what he was talking about.
No. I mean, he's not in my. I'm assuming that's in your chat, right? But I mean, so there's going to be a generalized. There's going to be a generalized problem there to omission and commission. And again, I think the fact that I can see a defense either way for saying you fixing your mistake is a violation of the other people's rights or not a violation of their rights. But I think the fact that issue exists at all. And there is going to be disagreements on it within deontology. I think that that is an issue. That's something that makes consequentialism seem a lot better because it's very simple to just say do the action that has the higher expected value.
Well, I would just say that if correcting your mistake would violate someone else's rights, then you shouldn't engage with it at all.
Okay.
I guess is my answer to that. Yeah.
Okay.
You wouldn't consider the accidentally pulling the lever to be a violation of someone's rights. You would consider that to be like an act of nature, I guess, or just. Well,
I thought you even said that like you would consider it like you are accidentally violating.
Like, maybe I didn't phrase it right. You are not the one that like. We agreed that a person who accidentally pulls a lever is not culpable for that situation, right?
Like, wait, repeat that. Sorry.
A person who accidentally pulls a lever is not culpable in that situation, correct?
They're not. If they accidentally pull it, they're not like individually. Yeah, but that's not. I don't think that's relevant.
They're not making any sort of any sort of decision.
That's the point of it. Yeah.
So if there was, I guess I was wrong when I said before that there was no, or I was misspeaking, or maybe misinterpreting what I was trying to say. I don't know how you want to say it. When you that wasn't necessarily like you violating their rights, but it would still be like a moral thing to save them if there was like no negative action.
Okay.
But if you're taking it,
But
if
there's a better example.
Like
okay, I want to give
versus like another, then like if you're going to violate one person's rights versus like two person's rights, like undo your mistake, then that introduces like a whole different thing to it.
Okay.
So,
okay. Let's say North. Okay. This is probably a better example. Hopefully, to avoid some of this fucking stupid ass confusion. Okay, but okay. Suppose someone they put a bomb in a park because they want to fucking kill people.
Okay.
Then they go to bed, wake up the next morning, they say, "Oh, I made a horrible mistake. I realized that was an immoral action. I'm gonna go back to the park and I'm gonna dig my bomb up." Okay. That's they're set to go off in a day or something, another day.
They have time to dig it up.
They have time to they go there and they start digging up their bomb. Well, they are digging up their bomb. They find another person's bombs, right?
Oh boy.
Or no, sorry. Let's say they find two other people's bombs, right? Each of these three bombs are gonna kill one person, right? And they only have time to defuse some of them. In this case, it seems like it'd be best for them to defuse the two bombs they found that are both going to kill one person. Even though they weren't the ones that planted that bomb. But on the view that like you should make sure that you don't do rights violations, that you should not violate someone's rights, it'd be more moral for you to just defuse your own bomb because that prevents you from violating other people's rights. But obviously, the thing that brings the most happiness in the world, the thing that the consequentialists support is, you defusing the other two people's bombs.
Well, I guess that goes into the situation of does not diffusing that other people's bombs, that violates people's rights more than you not diffusing your own bomb.
I mean, you would recognize right? that's not a violation of maybe you still want to consider a violation of rights on your.
You could say that.
I guess we would recognize. Do we think that it is a sort of
like you would say like you wouldn't be like you would no longer be responsible for like violating other people's rights, even though like hurt more people if you focus on diffusing your own.
I'm saying obviously if you put a bomb in a park that's gonna blow up and potentially kill or injure someone, if it does kill or injure someone, like that is obviously you directly violating someone's rights. If someone else if someone else does it and you have no knowledge of it at all, that's not you violating the rights. That's whoever planted the bomb's rights. Now, if you want to say that you discovering the bombs and having the opportunity to defuse them and choosing not to do so is still a violation of people's rights in some way, I would just ask, obviously it seems like you having knowledge of a bomb that you did not put there and choosing not to defuse it is a, less... it's not, or at least, you're less morally culpable for that. It's not as big of a violation of rights as if, or as you planting your own bomb and that in your own bomb blowing up and killing someone, right? It is a bigger violation of someone's rights from you directly when you plant your own bomb.
Dead, so it doesn't really matter in the end, does it?
Well, that's my argument. I'm a consequentialist. I care about the outcomes. But if you have a prescription, you should not violate people's rights. In this case, the better outcome for the world, right, is you violating someone's rights by not defusing your own bomb and having your.
I would argue that the choice of let's say you have a choice of either defusing two people's bombs or defusing your own bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Does defusing your own bomb make you less morally responsible than choosing to disarm the other two people's bombs and letting your bomb blow up? Right? Which one gives you more moral responsibility?
What I'm asking, obviously this is intuitive and I think plausible to most people. If obviously your own bomb blowing up and killing someone is a worse violation of somebody's rights than if you simply have knowledge of somebody else's bomb and choose not to intervene.
If you choose not to intervene and you see other people, I would argue that you're as culpable as the people that planted the bomb to begin with. If you know, like, a bomb is
okay.
there,
So
you
which
don't
one
do
are you?
anything about
Okay.
it. Like,
Which one are you more North, please? No, North. This is.
am I not engaging with the thing, or
I think this is
like-
entirely. I think this is like a post hoc stuff. Obviously, maybe you're misunderstanding, but this seems very post hoc to say. You would acknowledge if you plant a bomb and let it go off and it killed someone.
Okay.
That action,
Yes.
like in terms of just you personally, is a bigger violation of rights coming from you than if you simply have knowledge of somebody else's bomb and don't do anything to intervene.
I would argue that they're equal in like the violation.
They're equal.
Like, culpability,
You making your own bomb and planting it and blowing someone up is equal to you not intervening.
Like, well, I wouldn't say necessarily equal, but like they're both a violation of people's rights. There's maybe like
Which one is a bigger one? You could say they're both violations. Which one's bigger? Which one are you more morally culpable for?
I guess you're more morally culpable for the bomb that you personally planted, but
So do we
very
think
minor, like negligence.
There's a negligent difference between
the very very small like there's a reason why we have like laws for like being a an associate to like a murder, being able to get like
Mhm.
I would assume I haven't actually like looked at laws of this. Being a associate to a murder is probably gives you as much time in jail as like a murderer can get in jail, right?
Okay,
Like
so-
actually like covering it
right.
up and like
There are
prevent it.
two
Or like,
two things here. One,
you might not be the one that actively stabs someone, but if you're like there in the room and you like don't
Mhm.
report it and you like actively cover it up, then
yeah.
there's
So
you're
okay,
probably
two things.
just as morally culpable as like the person that like stabs.
Two things.
Yeah.
One, it seems weird to me to say the difference between making your own bomb and blowing someone up and just simply having knowledge of a bomb and not attempting to defuse it that blows someone up. That difference is negligible, but there is somehow a big difference in the trolley in the trolley problem case between accidentally flipping it and undoing your mistake versus just not touching it at all. So that's number one. Number two, it
Well,
seems
the difference
plausible.
between accidentally hold on the trolley problem and the bomb problem, that's like you're trying to equate them together, but no, those are like two entirely different like scenarios, right? Like one is like trying to plant a bomb at a fucking park, and the other one is letting
The thing I'm pointing,
that's, like, already...
the thing I'm pointing is you say there's such a big difference between omission and commission here, or in the trolley problem, you say there's such a big difference between omission and commission. But here, now you're saying actually omission and commission, there's very little difference between them. There's negligent difference between them.
Well, as I said, these are two entirely different scenarios. Like, let's say in the trolley problem, like I knew that the trolley problem was going to happen, and I choose to do nothing. But
Well, that is literally
I choose
in the
not to,
hypothetical.
like, switch it from
You
like
literally
one or the other. But like outside of that, how should I put this? Outside of that, I choose not to like try to do anything. I just like let it happen. I don't form like the police. I don't like try to do like some sort of like other shutdown without like switching from like one tractor to the other. There's a difference in like culpability there than like a bomb that I personally planted to like intentionally kill people. Like we could agree on that, right? Like there's a difference between the trolley person flipping the switch and a person who is like trying to murder people with like a bomb at a park.
I don't think you're okay. I'm not comparing
like
the two scenarios to be like I'm not comparing the two scenarios. The thing I'm focusing on right now, there were 2 points I wanted to make. I forget what the second point even was at this point. The
mental retardation is too strong. That's what it is.
The thing I'm trying to point out here is in the trolley problem, in the accidental trolley problem. Okay, you accidentally flip the switch. So first we acknowledge, or we say, and part of the reason you gave for why you might not flip the switch back after accidentally flipping the switch is that
the argument that I gave is like accidentally flipping a switch is like an accident of nature or something like that. Like there's no intentionality.
Yes, but then you said part of the reason you said you might not flip it back is because that would now be a violation of people's rights when you flip it back. Now other people are going to be run over.
If there was a choice between like doing one or the other, then it would be a violation of a person's rights. But if there was like either a choice of like not violating someone's rights or like letting someone die.
Oh my god! In the trolley problem hypothetical I gave, okay, there two people on one track, one person on the other track. Okay, if you switch the lever, it's going to run over one person instead of two.
And flipping it,
you would say
you
would say not touching it at all. Okay, not a violation of anyone's rights. Secondly, I gave the example, you accidentally flipped the lever, right? And we agree that posed some
also
imminent
not a violation of anyone's own.
That causes an imminent threat to somebody's rights. We eventually agreed upon that would be an accidental imminent violation of someone's rights. Okay. And part of the reason you gave, part of the reason you said for why you might not flip it back is that now if you did flip it back, that would be a violation of other people's rights on the initial track, right, on the straight track. So there you're making a very clear distinction between commission and omission, right? Like you're saying, if you do an act of commission, if you actively flip the switch back after initially accidentally flipping it, that is an act of commission. You're intentionally, consciously choosing to do this thing, and that is, what causes that is the act of commission that's a moral harm versus the act of omission of just not touching it to begin with, right? Even though the outcome for both is the same. But in the bomb in the park example, now you're saying simply like having knowledge of the bomb, that are going to two other people's bombs that are going to go off because they're the difference between action and commission, other people's bombs who are going to go off versus your bomb that you made that is also going to go off. Now this difference is not particularly relevant. Now omission and commission are similar levels of moral wrongness here
because you've already made the initial action of planting the bomb to begin with. Like that wasn't an accident, that was like an intentional thing to do, right? Like, are we making a conflation between someone accidentally flipping a lever and someone intentionally burying a bomb in a park and discovering someone else's bombs? Like, is that the conflation that you're making?
Okay, what is the thing that makes the act of omission? What makes the act of what makes the act of omission in the trolley problem case, the act of not switching the lever at all? What makes that wrong? Or sorry, what makes that not wrong versus the act of omission in the bombs in the park case?
Because in the trolley problem case, you've already accidentally flipped the switch, right?
No, not for the
engagement. There's been no engagement to begin with.
No.
Right?
No. We're not talking about no. We're not talking about when I say omission.
In the bomb situation, you've already You've already buried the bomb, so there's no
act of omission.
There's no omission in the second scenario.
The act of omission. First of all, the act of omission in the second scenario would be you not diffusing the bombs that other people set out, right? But second of all,
there's no omission.
You planted your bomb. There were 3 bombs.
Yes.
In the bomb hypothetical. One of them is yours. Two of them are others.
No matter what, you always start with you planting the bomb intentionally, right?
And then you discover 2 other people's bombs who you did not make and did not plant intentionally.
Yeah.
And the thing that
I understand what you're trying to say, but do you understand what I'm trying to say? Is like this.
I don't think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Scenario. I do understand what you're trying to say. What you're trying to say
well, first of all, you definitely misunderstood.
When I say the omission in the first scenario bad, and the okay, what you're trying to say is why should the omission in
I appreciate the $2, Michael. Thanks very much.
Be considered a good thing, and the you say the commission in the
to be clear,
problem.
When I say you're misunderstanding this initially first a little bit. When I say omission in the trolley problem, I'm not referring to the accidental trolley problem. I'm referring to the standard trolley problem where the act of omission would simply be not touching the lever at all.
Yes, that doesn't necessarily change anything. Like you haven't engaged with the trolley problem at all. There's been no actions done.
Yes,
You've not violated anyone's rights by like doing anything. Yes.
But you do just to be clear in the trolley by
burying the bomb that is already
there's no. We're not talking about your bomb. We're talking about other people's bombs. You didn't bury these people's bombs.
But you didn't bury these people's bombs, but you buried your bomb, right?
Yes. What does it matter?
So you're already engaged in that?
You buried your bomb. You came to regret it. You went to dig up other people's. You went to dig up your bomb. While digging up your bomb, you found 2 other people's bombs. You now have not just in the same way in the trolley problem. To be clear, You have knowledge that if you don't do anything, the train is going to run over 2 people. In the bomb in the park example, if you don't do anything to these other people's bombs that you did not plant, you simply discovered, you also have knowledge that these are going to kill 2 people.
So you only can disable 1 bomb, I'm assuming.
In this scenario, we'll say in this scenario,
there's only 1 of your bomb.
In this scenario, we'll say you can only disable either the 2 other people's bombs or disable your own bomb. In one case, if you disable your own bomb,
why? If you can disable 2 bombs, why couldn't you just do like your bomb and then like 1 of their bombs?
Oh my god, dude.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm.
So obviously, the point, like you should not be. The point of hypothetical is based on the parameters I laid out, right? It's not. It's not. You shouldn't be. You should not be trying to like game your way out of it. If you really need, no, this is stupid. No, you should be able to engage with the hypothetical. You should be able to engage with the hypothetical without me giving a background of the world where I say, oh, in this scenario, your bomb is super complex, so it takes twice as long to disable. These other 2 bombs are rudimentary. Like, I can give that background if you want, but you should be able to engage in the hypothetical regardless and be given the background of why you can only disable your own bomb or the 2 other people's bombs. Just, it takes twice as long to disable your bomb as the other people's bombs, so you can you choose between either both of theirs or 1 of yours.
Both of theirs or 1 of yours.
Yep.
You have to engage with that. Let's see, you've already buried the bomb, so you're already culpable somewhat. Then, well, if you're just trying to do like harm reduction, then of course you do the 2 other people.
I'm trying to do harm reduction. You're not trying to do harm reduction.
Oh, yeah.
You believe in rights.
Yeah, I do believe in rights. Yeah.
So would you rather, like, as a prescription for this person who buried this bomb, if you believe violating people's rights are wrong, right, and you say people should prefer to do less rights violations over more rights violations, do you think it would be like the person who uncovers these 3 bombs? You know, it is more of a rights violation for him to undo the 2 bombs he did not make himself. He just discovered. He just has knowledge of. You know, there's an act of omission, versus him undoing his mistake of commission of actually making a bomb himself. That's gonna kill 1 person as well.
I would argue that you'd be violating the least amount of people's rights with disabling the 2 bombs. But,
okay, so but you recognize the reason you're making that argument is because you don't think in that case there's a big difference between omission and commission. There's not a big enough difference between him having knowledge that other people's bombs are going to blow up and kill people versus him, actively making a bomb that's going to blow up and kill people. But then in the trolley problem, the accidental trolley problem, or no, sorry, not the accidental trolley problem, the initial, the standard, not the accidental one, the standard trolley problem, you are saying the omission, commission matters.
There is a better way of phrasing that accidental trolley problem. To make it similar to the bomb.
Wait, no, that misspoke. Not the accidental trolley problem. Just the initial trolley problem.
Knocked out. Okay, imagine if you knocked out the trolley operator, right? And you knocked him out so that you could go kill someone, right? You see, you decide to pull the lever to kill the trolley with 1 person on it, and then you kind of feel bad, and then you have a choice between. Well, you could either continue with the killing of 1 person, or you could switch it to like no, maybe that's not the best way of describing it. You could apply this to the trolley problem as well, where if you make a scenario where you're intentionally trying to like harm someone, and then you're like trying to undo the mistake that you already made, then that's an entirely different scenario than you never engaging with the trolley problem to begin with, I guess.
Okay,
right?
I don't know what the point. I maybe I'm stupid. I don't think anything you said was really directly relevant.
Maybe
okay.
I'm like
just to be clear,
this.
The thing is,
make a drawing for you.
I don't know why you're pointing to like this different hypothetical, because I don't think this hypothetical. I don't think the thing that you drew up is getting at what I'm getting at. The thing I'm getting at is that in the bomb case, you're saying you should undo the other 2 people's bombs, despite those not being, like, it's not a moral wrong of yours to make those bombs, because you didn't fucking make the bombs, but because you have knowledge that these bombs will blow up and kill one person each, you should defuse the bombs that two people made. If you instead did a different action, that would be immoral. You should defuse the bombs that the other two people made, because it'd be an act of omission. It'd be wrong to not defuse the bombs that other people made. But an initial trolley problem, not the accidental one, just the standard regular one, you're saying not pulling the lever at all would not be immoral, because that's simply an act of omission. That's simply you not making a decision. But then in the accidental trolley problem, once we introduce the element of you accidentally flip the switch initially, now it is a violation of people's rights to flip the switch again.
I was wrong when I said no. It's not a violation. That's not you violating it. It's just the person will be killed. I don't know if you can necessarily classify that as you.
Wait, in the bomb, you're saying in a bomb case
right.
of you. No,
okay. In the accidental trolley problem, you aren't. Like we agree that there's no like culpability of like that person intentionally violating that person's rights, correct?
Yeah, that's not relevant.
Well, then why do you bring up the accidental trolley problem?
Why do you think I'm bringing it up? What was the point I just made about it?
Maybe I might just be fucking retarded.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. Yeah. So again,
like,
the reason I'm bringing it up is because you said in the accidental trolley problem, one reason that you might not be in favor of undoing your mistake that you agreed would cause an imminent violation of someone's rights is that if you were to flip the lever back to its initial position, that would be a violation of rights that of people on the initial track. But in the standard trolley problem, your position is because it is an act of omission. If you don't engage with it at all, it is not a violation of those people's rights on the initial track, because they simply, that's you not making any decision. That's simply you not engaging with it. But when it comes to the bomb thing, now if you don't make a decision, it's still on you. Like, you're still saying that at least you defuse the two bombs that they didn't make, despite that also being an act of omission, rather than defusing a bomb that they made.
The problem is the bomb thing. I just can't, like, you can say that, like, if you just discovered 3 bombs, and it's like, are you to let one, here's a better way of saying the bomb thing. If you were digging in the park and you saw 3 bombs and you could choose
No, you don't. Okay, because again, the relevance of it is that when
bomb.
you make your own bomb, you are presumably, if you have a prescription for people to not cause rights violations, and it is a bigger rights violation, obviously, presumably, to make your own bomb and have it blow up people than it is just to let someone else's bomb blow up people, then you should hold, if you want people to do fewer rights violations, that they should defuse their own bomb rather than the 2 other bombs. But you don't hold that because in this case, you care about the consequences more.
Well, the consequences of people's rights being violated, but yeah, sure. I guess I can see the hypocrisy of what you're getting at.
Yeah. And again, there's also the
omitting from, like, why would you omit from one situation, and why would you choose to defuse the 2 bombs in the other situation?
Oh, okay.
That's what you're ultimately trying to get at, right?
Everyone wants us to move on from the bomb, so I guess we can.
Is your chat not liking that?
Yeah, some people. Yeah, we had there was one person that came in earlier complaining. I think I can't listen to this anymore. Just listen to them. LMFAO. Danabo came in. He said, "Move on from the bombs." Patrol said we were at 7 viewers when this started, or 13 viewers when it started. Now we're at
8, and now I'm at 3.
Danabo, I did say your name eventually. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we can talk about abortion now. We can move on to that topic.
Oh, you want to talk about it? You want to go talk about abortion? All right.
That's I came up with a list of the things I thought we disagree upon. You said these were the 2 you wanted to talk about. So.
Well, yeah, these are the 2 I thought would be most interesting to talk about. Let's see here now. Yeah, I'm pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception. I believe that humans have, like, I guess, a inherent right not to be murdered at conception, I guess. Yeah, those are the arguments that I will be. That's what I'll be arguing.
Yeah.
We can. What do you want to start? Like, defining
well,
life?
Here, I'll say
like,
first.
Where human life begins. Like
Yeah. So
what is like a human.
I'll lay out my position. I have a little bit of a weird position. Maybe it's good we talk about utilitarianism first because it explains the weirdness of my position.
Yeah, I figured utilitarianism would be better to start with first because it leads into the
kind of yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit weird because well, I'll get into why it's weird. So the first thing I would say, I think you're gonna have heard stuff along these lines. I think what I would call animalism is false. The belief essentially that like persons, that what makes us valuable, what we are, the being that we are, like is the organism, is the animal. I think it's more likely. So I don't. There are a bunch of there are a few different views of what makes a person exactly. Obviously, I like intuitively. Like I would have like a psychological continuity. I think is like that's where my intuition leads me. But there are reductios to that. I haven't like gone through and developed a super strong view on the personhood debate exactly with regards to like psychological continuity versus physical continuity versus whatever other schools of thought exist out there. But the thing I would say, animalism is highly improbable, and personhood has at least like a mental component to it, right? I don't think that I'm not necessarily committed to the mental component being the only component. I think that's where my intuition like leads me. Like it seems like, but like the justifications I would give to this, obviously, we could think about
the mental component. Do you mean like the development of like a brain, or like what are you exactly saying?
I'm saying of the like immaterial mind, right? So I believe so. I not super well read in this type of philosophy either. So I believe, it's probably most likely that like the immaterial mind, the experience of self, emerges from the physical structure of the brain. So I think I'm not entirely committed to personhood being based only on the mental component, although I think that is where my intuition leads me. But like the evidence I would get, so like the reason I think animalism is false, personhood has at least some mental components, is obviously some of the things you probably heard before. One, like brain dead people, despite them in many cases being a living organism still, human DNA. In some cases, their heart and lungs can, or actually, I don't know if their lungs can, but in some cases, like their heart can beat on their own even. Despite that, because they lack a mental component, we consider them brain dead. We consider them not people anymore. I think obviously, that's the case. Same thing. If we did if you did a brain transplant, obviously, I think it'd be like more correct to say that like you're like, you now have a different body than like this body now has a different brain, right? Like you, the person, the thing that you are is now just simply in a different body. Or even if you just did a, like the hypothetical they give now is that, because it's like the cerebrum transplant, which is just like, a part of your brain that has like a lot of your memories and such. Obviously, probably be more correct to say that, you now have like a new body and parts of a brain than like, the other way around. If I chopped off my head and put it on a robot, it'd be like I have a bionic body. It wouldn't be the other way around.
Yeah.
The one hold up like a little bit is that so like that's my view of personhood, but I do also just think that like future sentience matters. So, but it's regardless of the case, but that's not based on like an individual thing. So I don't because I don't think fetuses are a person up until there is a mental component, which from what I've seen, like almost certainly is not there before 12 weeks. I don't think I've never seen a case be made at all remotely convincing that there's any part of that there before 12 weeks. I don't view it as like an individual moral wrong, but I do think future sentience matters. So like people give the example in these debates, like, like would you save like a one baby, one toddler, or like a tray of 5 embryos? Now, I don't view the tray of 5 embryos as people. I don't think they like have the, rights as of a person. But if you were to just suppose that like the 5 embryos like went on to live like good, healthy lives, like I would hold that like the expected value of saving the 5 embryos is higher than saving the like one already developed
Trolley
person
all over again.
So it would be right. So it would be good. It would be good to save the 5 embryos just because of the higher future sentience. But that's not because I think those are people. It's just because the expected value is higher. You could equally say, like if you were to save one human person or 5, things of sperm and 5 things of eggs. Like I would say, assuming they went on to live good lives, I would save the 5 sperm and 5 egg.
why wouldn't you consider like an individual being with like some sort of like so you say you don't believe, I guess, in inherent rights. But you believe in like the expected future value of those fetuses. So,
but that's not because. So to be clear, that's not
Wouldn't that be? Wouldn't it be good then, like, to preserve that expected future value of like those fetuses, to give them some sort of, maybe not inherent rights, but according to you, just like rights in general?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if I was in the birding hospital, right? You know, I could, if we just suppose they went on to live good lives, I would save the 5 embryos, right? But equally, I would say, if we suppose it's either me saving a baby or me saving 5 dishes of sperm and 5 dishes of eggs, I would also save the 5 dishes of sperm and 5 dishes of eggs, assuming that we grant they would eventually, you know, lead to new lives being created who would live good lives. I don't think that, like, it doesn't follow from how I view a person that I would save the 5 embryos.
You're saying like the future value is only, it doesn't matter whether the embryo is actually formed or not, just as long as like the expected.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not saving the 5 embryos because
and if like you can guarantee that they'll be like combined together and grow into a future person, then you will. That's like the expected value that you see.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I would do the actions to higher.
Like, I would apply that. The problem I have with that from before the embryo, because I believe that humanity starts at like the embryo, is how far back do you consider the like the guaranteeness of it? Like, would you consider it like I guess a bad thing if like you prevented a guaranteed copulation between like a couple that would guarantee that a person would get pregnant? Like, do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like,
so I'm not gonna
I don't know how far back you can necessarily go with that.
No, so the thing I'm expressing in that hypothetical is simply like I'm just saying, like, if we grant that these 5 embryos and or 5 sperm and 5 egg are going to go on to make, you know, 5 humans that live happy normal lives, in that case, like, the expected value would be higher for saving them. I'm not saying that, like, an old, like, you know, I don't know. There's never going to be clear lines as to exactly, like, what we should consider sort of the set of, like, necessary conditions to like ensure that, like, there is going to be a future for that baby or whatever.
Well, I'd say the necessary conditions would probably be, sperm meets embryo, because assuming that either it's
but like if you're saying, like,
or it's
like the point that you were saying, like, if you were to prevent what exactly, if I was just to prevent a couple from having sex,
prevent copulation in like a couple, and that would guarantee to like lead to some sort of like embryo forming. Like, I don't think even are you just saying pro-life, I would argue that
right. Yeah. So basically, I would view. So I think an abortion before, whenever the mental component is there, like I said, I don't think there's a good case to be made at all that it's before 12 weeks. I would view an abortion as no more wrong than preventing a couple from, like, having sex and having a baby. And I don't know exactly where I stand on, like, sort of, like, would it be morally, like, if I just suppose, like, a couple is like going to have a baby, like, this is for some hypothetical reason the only reason they could have sex, and, like, I prevent that, like, I don't have a strong position on exactly how morally wrong that would be, but I wouldn't view an abortion as any morally wrong than that before, I'll say, 12 weeks, but I think sentience probably cannot emerge before, like, 20 weeks or so, but certainly 12 weeks, I would say. Doesn't seem like there's any good evidence.
Why do you suppose sentience has anything to do with, I guess, being definitionally human? Is it just like the experience? Is that the argumentation that you're coming from? Like the ability, like the ability to like experience pain or like emotions, or like is it like the ability to critically think, or like? So
I think if we,
I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I would give I gave a few things
where you draw that line.
One, I would say, like, if you know, if we have brain dead patients, number one, we don't consider them persons anymore, despite the fact that in many cases they do meet the criteria for, like, a living organism, but they lack a mental component now. Secondly, we could imagine cases where we do either a brain transplant or even just a partial brain transplant, a cerebrum transplant, or we cut my head off and put it on a robot body. We would consider the thing with the head, the thing with the brain, to be like the person, right? We would say a new, like, I have a bionic body. We wouldn't say like, oh, me, the organism, is dead, and now there's just a consciousness in a bionic body. No, I think we would say I'm in a bionic body. And then also we could look at we could wait just real quick. We could look at twins as well. Like, obviously twins can meet the criteria, or conjoined twins could meet the criteria for one human organism, but they have, in many cases, certain types of them, two heads. We would say there are two persons there, even if they share one body and are kind of two one organism.
Mm-hmm. I guess something I want to bring up is, how do you account for like different developmental stages exactly, right? So you would say that like if you put a human head on like a cyborg body, right? Well, obviously that's already like a fully formed human brain. But then if you take like the brain of like a baby, for example, that necessarily isn't collecting like the human experience almost. I would make the argument like the brain of a baby is probably the equivalent to like a dog or something like that. But you would never equivocate like the brain of a baby to like.
Oh wow, I'm a vegan. Don't make that argument of me, baby. Okay,
maybe.
I donate to the Shrimp Welfare Project. Okay, fuck them kids with malaria. My money's going to the shrimp. All right, but regardless, right. So I do.
If you were to actually make that choice, I would expect you to not kill. Like, if you had a choice between killing a dog and killing a baby,
well, so I would
expect you to not say, oh well, it's an equal 50-50 chance. They're like a the exact same thing. You would obviously say that baby has some sort of more inherent value than a dog, right?
So I want to I'm going to separate out the more modest premise, which I think most people can accept, and you might even accept to some extent too. And then, my insane, utilitarian, crazy premises, right? So, I'll be clear, but like my personal position, I would save the baby, but, mostly because the baby like has a much longer lifespan and a much higher capacity in the future to save or to experience a good life, like way better than the dog ever could, right? Because eventually the baby supposedly will have those experiences. But, equally, that's not because I view rights as intrinsically existing again. That's just like, you could equally say, like, would I rather save a dog or save a hypothetical person that will exist 5 years from now? I would save a hypothetical person that would exist 5 years from now because that person is going to have a higher capacity to feel joy and stuff than the dog ever would. But if I'm sure there's some crazy hypothetical we can imagine where I would say the dog is more valuable, but I think you'd have to make a lot of, you'd have to say like
a lot of weird scenarios.
Yeah, we're gonna have to say, you'd have to say like there's going to be an infant who remains at like infant level capacity for their entire life, and they also only live 5 years. In that case, I might save a dog that lives 15 years.
So
the more modest premise would just be to say, you can have whatever view of sort of the relative importance of persons and animals that you want. But the more modest premise is simply that personhood has a mental component to it. So you could say, I don't care about animals at all. I only care about persons, and personhood has a mental component to it. Or you could hold, like, if you were like super crazy, you could say, I view all persons and animals as entirely equal, but also still personhood has a mental component to it. All you have to accept for many abortions to be permissible is that personhood has a mental component to it, and you can avoid these issues.
Oh, but if you mentioned the future capacity of it though, so why? So,
I mean, that's why
start at the formation of like a brain? I'm still kind of hung up.
Oh well, that's how.
So start at like why can't it start at like when the embryo forms? I guess.
We might be a little confused here. So I'm, for one, I separated out the modest premise and like my personal insane blogger, Twitch streamer, philosophy premises. So under the modest premise, this issue like doesn't apply at all. Like the very modest premise is simply you can hold whatever other views that you want about animals and everything, and whatever. It's just simply that in order to be considered a person, that is granted whatever rights I want to grant people, whatever those views may be, you have to have a mental component that's not present in fetuses. Now, so my personal positions, again, is that, I mean, you should just do whatever the expected value is positive of. Like, I don't grant any intrinsic rights to persons. I do believe, like, that, like,
you said the future, happiness of that person is like in your personal philosophy almost, right? Like you're taking the future happiness of like the fetus into account, whether
yes, but that would
the
apply
abortion should go through or
equally.
not.
So because I don't view there being like an individual existing at all before there's any sentience there, like I don't view
But
when
they
I'm
will be
considering
an individual though, right?
but they will also be an individual if like two couples are about to have sex. So like I wouldn't view an abortion as any more like prior to whatever stage as any more immoral than just preventing a couple.
Moral philosophy. Well, if you consider like, would you consider like, I guess, abhorrent to like prevent, or maybe not abhorrent, but I guess we'll just say generally bad to like prevent that from like being formed, I guess, or that future happiness from being
to prevent
like, I guess denied, I guess. Like
no,
if you're preventing something that would guaranteed of happening, like a person being formed or a person like growing up, why would that preventing that be okay in your moral framework?
So okay,
like,
so there's
you say that in according to your philosophy, preventing two couples from having copulation, which are guaranteed to have a baby, is no different than having to have an abortion. And you say that, well, just because they're both similar to you, that means that an abortion really just doesn't mean anything. But before a brain is developed is the specific timeline that
basically,
you set. Why is that specifically like a morally neutral thing instead of like, well, both of them could be a bad thing?
I'm not
in your moral framework.
So they could both be a bad thing. If we're talking about my personal philosophy, I'm going to sound insane. Okay, so I don't have super strong credence levels either way if it's a good or bad thing. I would lean towards like more humans being a good thing. The issue like here's the issue is that I'm for aborting all non-vegans. Okay, that's the real. So, but part of the issue. So like this, like generally, like again, I'm going to sound insane. Okay, if we're talking about my personal philosophy, this is why I appeal to modest premises.
That's a little bit insane. I might have to
that's mostly just to be clear. So that's mostly ironic for anyone who fucking clips this.
Okay.
So the actual position is.
I want to clip this and upload it to my channel.
Yeah. So the position, to be clear, is going to be, I think most humans individually live net good lives, especially in developed countries, right? And contribute to the world positively. They do cause a lot of animal suffering if they eat meat, but they also tend to reduce the wild animal population, and because wild animals live negative lives, those can roughly offset each other. So I might cause a bunch of animal suffering by eating meat, but if I live in a house that bulldozes a bunch of wild, habitats to build, those can roughly even out. So I would lean towards like more life being good, but I'm not actually necessarily 100% sold on that.
Before of like the human experience, because we have like more developed brains, might mean that. But the scale more than like an animal,
Yes, but the scale also matters because obviously humans eat way more than one animal, right? Like we eat like I think the average is like 2,000.
Another animal anyway, so.
Well, but obviously the animals in factory farms, wouldn't exist otherwise. You like literally you tried to use that as a reductio earlier, saying they wouldn't exist if we didn't eat them. So but
that's fair. That's fair.
Right. So that's that. I think like I said, I might sound a little bit insane when I say stuff like that, but I would lean towards it being good.
Agree that
but the secondly,
on average are going to give a positive.
That's it. I would lean towards that position, yes. But the second thing is when it comes to that's all insane stuff. But also absent a little bit of the insane stuff, the question is going to be like, even if I do think like it is bad to prevent that or whatever, it's going to come down to like what a possible world like could we live in where like it is permissible for the government to somehow like if it is good to have babies or whatever, and I don't view an abortion as any more wrong than like preventing people from having sex or whatever, or even like contraceptives that prevent fertilization, obviously. Like it seems like it would entail like if I want abortion to be banned, I would probably also want things like many contraceptives to be banned as well, and it seems like that would just lead to hugely negative outcomes.
Well, it wouldn't be all contraceptives. It would be like
whichever one.
said,
I'm not
consider like the human formation being at like the fetus, right? So you can never guarantee that someone will be pregnant, like in general, if they have like sex, right? So having like a condom or something like that wouldn't necessarily guarantee. Well,
it's not gonna guarantee it, but like it obviously. So like I would view. So like I would say, because prior to there being any sentience in the fetus, it's not a person. There's no individual there to be harmed. I would not view an abortion as any more immoral than a hypothetical use of a condom that, and we'll say in this hypothetical, prevents the baby from being conceived and born to live like a normal life or whatever. They could.
I'm saying you can never guarantee that a condom will either prevent, or without a condom that there would be a pregnancy that would like happen, right? But with an abortion, that's like the fetus and the egg have already come together, so that's like that is a process that will continue, assuming that you don't do anything.
I mean, I don't know why the
artificially stop it.
I guess I don't know why like the guarantee, like you could obviously, like on average, like the
would you argue
wait, hold
that
on, I just want to be clear,
different than like a statistical like likely or like unlikely?
So yes, but obviously like we're speaking in so if we're speaking in hypotheticals, I want to be clear. The position I'm laying out here is like in the hypothetical world is that like I don't view an abortion prior to 12 weeks or whatever. I mean, I say 12 weeks because that's when I'm like almost certain that there's no sentience. I'm not a doctor though. I've never done a deep dive into the issue, but no, I don't view that in a vacuum in a hypothetical world where we know these things as any more immoral than someone using a condom that we know in this hypothetical is going to prevent conception. So that is the position I'm laying out. If you want to then go to, well, in the real world, we kind of don't know how often like this position is going to hold exactly. I don't, for one, I would like to respond to the position itself, basically about personhood and stuff. But for two, I guess I don't know how much that would like actually influence the. I guess I don't know how much that would influence my thoughts at all. I don't know why the like certainty thing matters. Maybe I'm missing something, but.
I might be too brain dead to respond.
Well, so I would just ask like let's just do so let's stay in the vacuum world for a second. What is
the vacuum world? We're talking about like guarantees of like, well, does
what to you
100%.
Is the morally relevant distinction between someone using a condom that in the hypothetical vacuum world we know for sure stops contraception from happening versus someone receiving an abortion at like, we'll just say 6 weeks?
Well, in this hypothetical world, there wouldn't be any distinction because you're, in theory, like if it's guaranteed to happen, like 100%, then I guess that's no different than like any. Well, then
it would seem like you've moved off your original position of humans being.
Well, because I take animalism. My original position because we would take the real world different. We take the hypothetical world of like because as I said, like if you're having sex in real life, that's never going to be a guarantee of like a fetus ever being like formed or anything like that. And like, I guess, so
wait,
preventing the egg and
the position is that in the hypothetical world, the definition of person is different than the definition of person in the real. This doesn't make, I don't know.
No, a person is when like a fetus and an egg and a sperm can come together and form a fetus. That is my definition of person, right? But if like,
so then
let's say let's say you went back in time and like you killed your grandfather and that like prevented you from being born. Like, would you have technically murdered yourself? I would argue that you would have murdered yourself, even though that would like create a paradox. Or it doesn't have to be yourself. Like, let's say you go back in time and you kill let's say Joe Biden's grandfather, for example, and you prevent him from being born. Would you argue that you murdered Joe Biden?
I mean, I don't know what I would hold in that case. I would like
I would argue that
because I'm just like I'm not again I'm not like
like a set event, but you can never 100% predict that sort of thing in real life, obviously. So
okay, but like if we're just
has to be
talking
made that that personhood only happens with when a sperm and an egg come together to form a fetus.
but like if we're just talking like philosophically, like what a person is, and you hold that like a person is, you know, just a
person
zygote,
is like an individual organism with like, well, it doesn't have to be their own DNA, just like I guess an individual.
Wait, it doesn't have to be their own DNA.
Well, because you can have the argument like twins can have like the same DNA, but still be like two separate like entities, I guess. So.
Well, that's it. So
like you would never argue that like twins are like the same organism, right?
They are the same organism.
They hold like the same DNA. Twins?
Conjoined twins.
Not conjoined twins. I mean like literal like twins. Yeah. Twins.
No, regular twins are different. Right. But they're different organisms because they're
like two separate entities. So you can't necessarily use the individual DNA argument for like defining
You're
like
using
individualism.
The individual. Okay, hold on. To be clear, okay,
well, no,
so
I'm not.
conjoined. So twins are not the same organism. DNA is not the only thing that matters. Obviously, like there's a word for like homeostasis or whatever. But like being able to sustain like homeostasis or whatever, being able to stay alive on your own, it like is a factor of an organism too,
of, like,
right?
Growth, metabolism, energy, transformation, and like reproduction.
Right. So there are conjoined twins who would I think reasonably be considered, you know, one organism under the sort of the animalist definition of organism or person or whatever that like, you know, people like you provide, but we clearly view them as separate people, at least insofar as they have separate heads, or sometimes they can have like connected heads but still two brains. Like obviously that is I view that as a flaw of the animalist definition of human or of a person.
I don't know how I would necessarily respond to that off the top of my head. Hold on. Animalist definition. I'm writing this down so I can go look at this later.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's it. So the position you like laid out earlier, like humans are like the persons are like the individual human organism or whatever. That is like what would fall into the animalist definition of persons.
Well,
I think that's
I guess you could argue that they don't necessarily have to be independent for them to be considered like two different beings, I guess.
But what is the being thing? That's referring to the mental component, is it not? That's my whole argument. Is that the reason to conjoin twins are two different beings, despite being, you know, the same organism, is that they have two different mental components. But obviously, like a fetus prior to how many ever weeks has no mental component. Obviously,
so
zygote.
Here's a question that I would give to you. Do you consider, let's say that you had like a conjoined twin, right? That one twin literally like didn't have a brain. Would you consider that two separate beings, or would you just consider that like one being?
Wait, so you're saying they have two separate brains? Like they're just
like
two,
one, like no, like yeah, like a conjoined twin, but one of the twins is literally like completely brain dead. It's like they have if
they're completely brain dead,
for, like,
if there's no mental component, then it would just be one person.
It would just be one person. Okay, I guess so.
The same way I consider a brain dead person not a person. Wait, do you consider? I'm curious. Like, what exactly is your position on a brain dead? Like, is it, you know?
I would consider like even two persons, even if like if they were like brain dead, I guess.
So if you consider that two persons, would you also just consider a regular brain dead person a person that we can't like pull the plug on?
Well, yeah, I would argue that you shouldn't pull the plug on a person who's like brain dead, especially. Well, there's other arguments to be held in that, but like philosophically speaking, yeah, you shouldn't. I would argue that you should be taking care of that person. Like if I argue anything different, I'd be.
I mean, I don't want to go back here, but it's just for that. Like, would you hold that position even if killing the brain dead person meant we could use his organs to save, like, we'll just say two people?
Well, no, but that would be for different reasons. Just because there's never like a guarantee of like someone being brain dead. I guess. How should I put this? Like,
I mean,
you've
you
heard
can
like
be.
of the stories of people who like think that they're like in comas or something like that, and they wake up like
That's
years
different
later.
than
Or in
brain dead.
There's people that I'm pretty sure they thought that they were brain dead, and
There, if you want to say doctors, yeah, everyone recognizes that like in even brain dead, to my understanding, like is a spectrum or whatever. But if you want to say like, obviously there have been some cases of patients miraculously waking up from comas that doctors never thought they would wake up from. That is a thing that happens occasionally or whatever. Sometimes they might even get misdiagnosed as brain dead. But there are patients who.
It's also a matter of like future medical
obviously
development as well. Like what happens if someone is brain dead and we develop a way for like stem cell injection, for example, and that will allow them to like regenerate their brain to the point that they'll be like.
Well, that doesn't seem relevant to the view of personhood that we're taking. Like to me, that would be relevant because of the future potential sentience. But
idea of like a future like development.
To me, it would. Yeah. Right? So to me, it would be
either. Yeah. Well,
to me, it would be relevant.
Framework.
It's just you have to like weigh like what is the chance I can save 2 people right now by getting his organs versus what is the chance the miraculous cure is going to come out for this dude in the next day versus. Or you just have to weigh those 2 things. But for you, it's like that shouldn't matter for the conception of personhood. You should just hold that they are a person either way.
Well, yeah, they should have a right to not die just for the sake of, I guess, them being sick.
Of being brain dead.
Is a way of describing it. Yeah, being brain dead.
Does that right extend to? I mean, so right. There might be.
If you're talking about the executions, is that what we're going to talk about?
No. Well, we could talk about that too, but I guess like there are distinctions that you can make, and I think there are distinctions you can make in the case I'm about to bring up too. But like, would that also apply to like obviously hypothetically if we had a brain dead patient or whatever who had to be hooked up to a woman for 9 months? Like, would we hold that the woman would have some obligation to hook herself up to him?
Well, you're taking the violin argument.
No, not.
Are you familiar with that?
Not really. I'm familiar with the violin thing, but the violin argument is that even if fetuses are
the right to
but the violinist argument is that
autonomy versus
So yeah, the violinist argument is that like even if fetuses are persons, in the violinist example, which I'm not going to be able to recite or whatever, we should still allow abortion for bodily autonomy reasons. I don't buy that argument. I think if fetuses are persons, you should not, like, abortions would not be permissible. But I'm asking you in the hypothetical of if abortion, because you would not buy the violinist argument, obviously. If you're saying, like, the fetus is a person and the woman has some obligation to
yes,
keep the baby alive or whatever, I'm asking if you also consider brain dead patients persons, do people have an obligation to keep them alive, even if it's at roughly the cost of whatever it is for a woman to carry an unwanted pregnancy, however you want to weight that suffering?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't. Okay. So what about the brain transplant things? That like do we recognize so with the definition of a person you gave, if we like transplanted my brain into somebody else's body, like it would seem like under your definition of person, like my body, the rest of my body would still be me, and then I guess my conscious experience is just in somebody else's body now. Like what does that entail exactly?
I would argue that even if you're like an ever-changing person, you can still have, I guess, some concept of like what is you, right? Like obviously I don't hold any of like the original cells that I was like originally born with, right? Like as I have
I mean there are some that
all the way
like
through.
I think
there's probably some that are probably still there from when I was originally there. But what I'm saying is like our skin gets fully replaced after a couple of weeks or something like that. It's like your bone every 2 years, they say it's like almost all your cells have been completely replaced with like brand new cells, So would you argue that the person that you were 2 years ago is like the same person that you are today, even though you don't have any of like original cells of back then? I would argue like as a whole that, yeah, you were the same person now than you were back
I
then.
don't see how that addresses it. So like I would hold. So I put the most credence in just a psychological continuity view of personhood. So I would argue even if simply my brain continued to exist while the rest of my body didn't, or even if like just like my consciousness was uploaded to a computer, like that would be, that'd be more of a person than like if, the rest of my body still existed and my brain just simply lacked a conscious experience, right? But, that's it. Like that's a view I would hold. But you, to my understanding, would just define human like as a, unique organism with like unique human DNA or whatever. And it seems like from that
not
view,
necessarily unique human DNA, because I said you have twins who share the same DNA.
Sure. Well, you should say, okay. Well, what it just, I'm pretty sure you gave your definition earlier, but just to be clear, like, what is your definition of person?
It's very, this is something that philosophers have been arguing about, like what is a human for ages. I guess a unique organism that can grow. Grow. Oh, I had this whole list here. Yeah, grow, metabolize, gather energy, and transform as well. That's like an organism that's able to do that. So if you feel like a dead human cell, for example, like a cell can't necessarily grow on its own. It needs, like, you would never consider like an arm or a
so I think
human cell as like a human, right? But you take the totality of like the whole of being
I still think
human.
That's basically the definition I've been assuming that you use or whatever. I think you run into all the problems with it would be unethical to unplug a brain dead patient, even potentially if it saved other people's lives. Conjoined twins is a really weird case where you have two beings, right? But only one organism or whatever. There'd be cases of brain transplants and stuff, or those are hypothetical, but where, obviously most people would say, the personhood moves with the brain. There's a, person who has a new body rather than a person that has a new brain. All those things I think are serious issues with that sort of animalist definition that you provided. And I think if that definition is false, and I think all those reasons I just listed give you reasons to believe it is false, then personhood has to have at least a mental component to it. And, I think that's a relatively modest premise to accept. And that would get you to at least some abortions being permissible. There are definitely still some that you could say are impermissible, but yeah.
Well, even if you were to argue, let's say theoretically speaking, that there was a mental component to personhood, I guess you could say denying the future mental, the future development of a brain would also be considered.
But why would that be any more wrong than just again denying the So if you're gonna, so I would say to some extent I recognize the argument, the future like ours argument or whatever. I think in order to argue that a fetus or whatever has a future like ours that ought to be protected, they ought to be a member of the persons, right? They ought to be a person. And I just don't think fetuses are a person prior to having a any mental component whatsoever. Yeah.
But you say that you recognize you are able to recognize the future component of it, of the brain developing, right?
Are you talking about? So if we're going again back to my position, you should always
yes
I
recognize the denying of a future.
So I think you're again is you're confusing thing,
right? So we can work backwards.
No. I think you're confusing. So I don't, I do care about future sentience, but I care about the future sentience of a zygote the same amount I care about the future sentience of any sort of any hypothetical. You could just say I press a button and a person just begins to exist, or I stop a couple from having sex. So there's a difference between if a fetus is a person, the sort of individualized harm of I am killing a person, versus if a fetus isn't a person, I'm simply through getting an abortion preventing a future person from existing, the same way any number of actions I could do, most of which we view as permissible, can prevent a future person from existing.
How should I put this? How do you define a brain?
Mm-hmm.
I guess, or the development of a brain.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
I'm asking you, how do you define that?
Maybe I don't know exactly. Or are you kind of just roughly getting at like how do we know when fetuses are sentient? Is that like the angle here or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't know.
Because I would argue that even like a baby isn't like fully sentient. I guess it depends on how you.
Well, I think they're sentient. If you want to say like they have not reached
and like the capacity of like self-reflection and like acknowledgement of like personhood and all that.
But you would agree babies are like they are conscious, right? even obviously they might not have the same capacity as a full-grown adult, but they are conscious.
Yes.
Right. So all you have to hold is that personhood has a mental component. So you could have any number of beliefs about any number.
Where is your magic switch? I guess, in which it's magically considered sentient. Yes. Like where in the developmental stage do you consider that?
Oh, I've never done a deep dive on it myself. So certainly I would say there's no good case to be made that it could be sentient before brainwaves exist. And I don't believe you see any brainwaves at all until like 8 weeks or whatever. Which 8 weeks is relatively early on. I'm pretty sure most states have bans before 8 weeks or whatever. But
why do you specifically
so if we
do brainwaves?
Because every piece of evidence suggests that consciousness comes from the brain, and if you don't have a brain, you're not conscious. And if you injure even certain parts of the brain, you cannot be conscious anymore. And obviously, we observe, depending on what part of the brain you injure, that has different effects on your personality and experience and stuff. So that gives us, obviously, consciousness comes from the brain. Certainly.
Well, how are you defining consciousness in this one? So even if like neurons are necessarily firing, I guess, would you consider that definitionally consciousness? Or if there's like brain waves, would you consider that definitionally conscious?
No. So like I said, I don't think there's any case to be made that before brainwaves exist, there is sentience. It doesn't follow that if any brainwaves exist at all, that it therefore is sentient. It's unlikely that worms are sentient.
Makes necessarily like a brainwave? Well, I'm saying what makes a brainwave consciousness, I guess. Like if there was like a single brainwave, for example, would you consider that consciousness?
That's I don't even know what it means to say a single brainwave. like it's just a single like firing between neurons. And so obviously,
yeah, I don't know.
I don't think this like. I'm gonna be mean. No offense. Like it doesn't. Just hold on. Just to be clear,
personhood and non-personhood is like the first neuron firing in like a developing brain, or is it like
just to be? It doesn't feel like a serious objection to my view on personhood to simply say, well, Nonfon, despite my view having all these insane reductios about conjoined twins and about brain transplants, and about.
Well,
any number of these things. Have you, Nonfon, considered the exact number of brainwaves required to have a sentient experience?
Well, you're arguing. I'm not claiming to know. That the development of a brain is what defines personhood, right? That is your argument.
My argument is that a personhood,
the development of a brain.
I'm not taking a super strong view exactly on what personhood is. I'm simply saying whatever a person is, okay, has to have a mental component to it. There has to be some sentience, some mental component there. There can be any number of other optional things that people want to attach to it depending on their view. You might say like also the brain has to be like somewhat physically like continuous. Like if I upload my consciousness to a computer, that's a different physical thing it's running on. Like my consciousness is running on, so it's not the same person anymore. All I'm saying is that personhood has a mental component to it. Animalism is highly implausible. And if you accept that, at least some abortions are permissible, or at least as permissible as preventing future persons from existing in any other scenario. I would also, I guess, one of my claims is also obviously, and I don't think this is seriously in dispute, that sentience comes from the brain, consciousness comes from the brain, and at some point between having no brain and having a fully developed brain, the fetus will gain some amount of sentience. that's all I think you have to accept.
I'm just thinking that that sentience and consciousness isn't necessarily something that like comes on at like a magical point, right? It's
No, I don't think you have to.
It's more like a spectrum.
I don't
right?
think you. I would agree with that. I don't think you have to accept that. Again, like I would just agree, or I would just say like, you agree zygotes are not sentient, right?
Well, not sentient as in like they don't have a brain, sure. I guess you could say
under
like
what?
Like a zygote, like if I were to like mess with like a zygote, for example, like there would be some sort of biological like response to that, right? If I were like to kill like a zygote cell, right?
Okay. Do you think that like sea cucumbers and like slime molds are sentient?
No, I wouldn't say that they were sentient. Well,
obviously,
as again, like I guess sentient and not in like their. I guess it depends on how you would define sentient.
Oh my god. Well, so when I say sentient, I mean the ability to have some like sort of first-hand experience, right? Like the ability to have some type of feeling, some type of I don't like strictly want to say emotion, but like some, subjective experience, some thinking going on. That doesn't like
I would
organisms.
I would argue that a like a sea cucumber, for example, right? It probably gets like some sort of a positive chemical response whenever it like eats food.
Sea cucumbers don't have brains.
There's probably like something like programmed into it for it to like do certain actions. Right?
Okay, but I can program a robot to do that.
Like, would you argue
that
that's like sentience, and would you argue that's like consciousness?
That's not sentience. Okay. They don't have brains.
Well, not sentience as in like. Would you argue that a dog has sentience?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep. Because they have a central nervous system. Yeah. They show a lot of behavior that we associate with sentient. Like we see when dogs are wounded, they respond to that by limping or whatever.
Consciousness and sentience in my brain. I would argue that on a moral level, that there's very little difference between when you're like considering like difference between animals. I say there's difference. Actually, would I say that? I don't know. My brain is getting thoroughly confused.
Okay.
Congratulations, Nonfon. You've broken my brain.
Yeah. I just want to like
wake up at like 3 a.m.
When I say sentience, and when everyone, to my knowledge, is sentience, they're referring to like not just the ability of an organism to respond to stimuli, because many non-sentient organisms have that. Even robots like have that. Like they're not organisms, but I can program a robot to.
Okay. When defining sentience as, would you accept this definition of sentience of having subjective experience such as pain, pleasure, and other emotions? Would you consider that?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
That's reasonable.
So do you think like a sea cucumber can experience like some sort of like a sea cucumber can experience something like pain, correct?
No.
You would argue that a sea cucumber can't feel pain?
If they're not sent by, so I would say by definition, if something's not sentient, yeah, they can't feel pain. So you might be confusing, and I don't know if there's evidence for this either. So there is a difference between like I think it's called nociception or whatever, and pain. So like, like if pain is like the actual subjective experience of something. Nociception or whatever, it's just like the nervous system kind of response or whatever. And organisms without brains can have that. So like if you put your hand on a hot stove, your hand will reflex away before you actually feel pain and before the signal even like gets to your brain, because there are other parts of your body that before your conscious experience even gets a like signal from your arm, reflexively like pull it back. Like there are like obviously there are animals, there are single-celled organisms that can respond to stimuli in the same way, but it doesn't necessarily imply that they can feel pain, as in they are like conscious and have a subjective experience
like,
of pain.
They can feel pain as in like they respond to stimuli, right? Like we can agree on that. It's just whether we are definitionally
Some of the
I
don't know if cucumbers have this. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me. They have, I think it's called noteception or notoception. But yeah. But again, like I could program a robot to move its hand when it checks something hot. That doesn't imply that the robot is conscious. Now, when we observe that behavior in animals, it can be evidence of some type of sentience. The fact that shrimp rub their wounds when they do, when they experience pain or when they have a wound, is evidence that they can feel pain. But there's other things that shrimp have, like a central nervous system, like more complex behavior, like trade-offs between risk and reward that they take, that is also necessary for sentience.
So I'm confused on the, is it just the complexity that you would say that differentiates it, or is it just the risk and reward, like the ability to feel, I guess, not just respond to like a negative stimuli, but also like go after some sort of positive stimuli as well, like eating food, for example, or like treating a wound after it's.
Wait, what you're saying differentiates what exactly? Pain
is it
from
like the complexity
noception?
is it the complexity that by definition differentiates like the consciousness of a shrimp?
No. So
than like a sea cucumber, like
no. So the more
like the more
give me
like the more.
Yeah, so the more complex behavior is evidence of consciousness. But when I say pain, what I mean by it and what people define it as
by pain, do you mean like going through like a central nervous system? Is that how you're like?
That is probably one.
Pain,
that is probably no. So it's not defining it, but that is something that's probably required to have it. Because in order to have pain, there has to be a sentient being there that exists to have a subjective experience of that pain. That is not the case for cucumbers. That's not the case for slime molds. That's not the case for maybe even some insects. That's probably not the case for anything without a central nervous system. Again, I could program a robot to do the types of behavior that we observe from sea cucumbers, I believe. Yeah.
Like, let's say that you were able to program a robot to respond to just any sort of like negative stimuli. Like, for example, if the robot detects heat over a certain level, then it will pull away, like how we would experience pain.
Mm-hmm.
At what point of like complexity is what I'm trying to get at? At what point do you go from, well, it's no longer feeling pain to feeling pain, I guess.
You
mentioned like a central nervous system, but what makes a central nervous system so special? Because it's just a way of like transmitting information, right?
No, the central nervous system is something that's probably required to have sentience, right? So it's not that like because a central nervous system is more complex, like that enables things to feel pain. Like it's because in order to be sentient, you probably have to have a central nervous system that, like a central nervous system, is like also a requirement of feeling pain, right? I'm just saying, in order do you agree? Like, you have to be sentient to feel pain, right? To have a subjective, that's almost a tautology. Like, to have a subjective, you have to have a subjective experience to experience something within that subjective experience. Like,
isn't that just like circular?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that I might be using the word wrong. I think that's literally an example of tautology, right? When we say pain, we mean something, a subjective experience of like discomfort. When we say sentience, we basically just mean a subjective experience. So you have to have a subjective experience to feel pain. My argument would be things like sea cucumbers, things like single-celled organisms might respond to external stimuli, but they are not sentient.
Yes.
They therefore cannot feel pain. In the same way, a zygote might have some response to external stimuli, but they are not sentient. They cannot feel pain.
But the only thing that you're differentiating is the central nervous system. You're saying that a central nervous system allows
that is
something
one
that's sentient
thing.
in order to feel pain.
Oh my god! Wait, hold on. Just to be clear. Okay, for one, the requirements for being sentient are not actually relevant to the point I'm making. The point I'm making, well, actually, it partly is, but like the fundamental point I'm trying to get through is, it seems like we agree on this. You have to be sentient in order to feel pain. Okay, so if we agree on that, my second point is going to be fetuses up until a certain point are not sentient. Do you agree with that?
Up until a certain point, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
It depends on where you define sentience. Yes.
Do you think a zygote is... Wait, but you agree a zygote is not sentient, right?
Like,
please, dear God.
By sentient, I mean, like, do they respond to like external stimuli, and can they feel pain, and do they have some sort of,
let's use the definition of sentience everyone else uses, which is some subjective experience, okay? Do you agree a zygote does not have a subjective experience?
You mean like a subjective... How are you defining a subjective experience here?
As in like a first-hand like feeling of the world, some type of qualia that is able to... emotions are probably more complex than what is even really required for sentience, but, you know, some type of ability to feel things and like have an actual experience qualia there.
I don't know how would I... Okay, I'll say off the top of my head, well, I'll say no. A zygote does not have the ability to experience. But actually, it's not necessarily yes or no. I just think that the idea of this necessary definition of sentience and this definition...
it should be like... It really should be yes or no when it's a single-celled organism, right? We would agree sentience probably has to come from something that's more complex than a single-celled organism, at least sentience within nature. Maybe one day we'll make some weird cloud bullshit, but...
Like, here's an example. If, let's say you had an extremely complex organism, like a human, right? But they had no ability to maintain, like, a... subjective experience, meaning like whatever they experience will like never be in reference to like anything else, I guess is the best way to I'll say like they'll be constantly living from moment to moment without any ability to like retain any sort of like pain or pleasure or have that put into reference to any sort of like experience. Does that make sense?
Are you just saying they're not going to have any type of continuity, basically?
Yeah. If they have like no,
so you can have like you can have a sentient
or anything like that. Would you say that like would you argue that that person doesn't have like a subjective experience?
No, I say they have a subjective experience. If you want to say, you could maybe use it as a reductio, if I'm being charitable, to say like, if you take the psychological continuity view of personhood, we could imagine a sentient person that has no psychological continuity, but they are sentient because they have feeling. Like that thing, the thing that you are describing that you say lacks continuity. I'm talking about that thing. Does a zygote have that thing?
I guess I can't think of according to the definitions of
I'm using your I'm saying I'm saying you gave an example of a subjective experience that has no continuity, right? Yes. So there's a thing you're talking about that lacks continuity. Whatever that thing that lacks continuity is, whatever you want to say that is, maybe you don't like the word sentient, you want to use some other word. Whatever that thing is that lacks continuity, does the zygote have that thing?
No, it wouldn't have. It would lack continuity, but I was going to use that. It was good.
No, wait, not that it lacks continuity. Does it have the thing? Okay, so there's an object, a noun that you are speaking of. You don't like the word sentient, all right? Yeah. There's a noun that you're saying, I am describing X thing as lacking continuity. I'm not asking if the zygote like lacks continuity. I'm asking, is X thing that you are describing here as having no continuity, does the zygote have X thing?
Then yeah, I would say it would have that that X thing.
Okay. Can you give a name to that X thing? I'm just like I'm dumbfounded. Like, do you recognize whatever X thing is? You recognize that's not what people mean by sentience, right?
I guess
like,
yeah. I guess it would have to be some sort of external definition. I guess not what the official definition.
Sure.
Of
so like just the common definition of sentience, or the definition of sentience I provided, which is the ability to have some like subjective experience. We agree a fetus does not have that.
Well,
before it has any brain, at least.
I would argue that it doesn't necessarily have any sort of subjective experience. But it still has, I guess, it wouldn't have any subjective experience, mainly just because it doesn't have any any way to like retain its experience, I guess, which I guess you could argue that might be due to lack of a brain. But then again, if you have like a baby or something, or if you have like a fetus with a developed brain, it still won't be able to retain anything that happens in the womb. So you could take this argument all the way to, well, a baby.
I don't know. It just feels like you're going back to the continuity thing.
Yeah.
But the continuity thing is not necessary. I don't think continuity is not necessary for sentience. Obviously, you gave the example of something with sentience it's not continuous, doesn't have continuity. Now I said my intuition does lead me most to subscribe most credence to like a psychologically continuous view of personhood, and like maybe you could make the case like you're not really the same person as you were in the womb or whatever, and therefore maybe there's some reductios associated with that. But regardless, I don't think that matters for my point. Is okay. Maybe the word mental is better. All right. This conversation is pretty mental. All right. So
this conversation
is making me go pretty mental. I just want to know.
I can tell that you're getting a little bit annoyed by this conversation.
There is there's no mental component that a zygote has or a fetus has before there's any brain there.
By no mental, like a zygote isn't forming any like unique thoughts. Yes.
All right.
There's no brain
physically. And we agree that that doesn't happen in like, I don't know when you think it would happen, and I don't have a super strong view, but that wouldn't happen until like at least until there is a brain.
Yeah. Well.
And
yeah. But it's still like a unique organism that can respond to like stimuli, I guess. Sure. It depends on,
so I just want to be clear. I believe.
Do you think I just don't see the argument that I usually hear when it comes to the brain development is, well, it can't feel pain before.
Well, sentience is going to be a necessary requirement for pain. So.
Well, I would argue that it can feel pain. It's just that let's see how it was. What's the official?
Are you saying it? Okay. Are you saying it
by
can
pain being like the negative response to like a certain like stimuli?
That's called that's just called noception or notiception or something.
Notiception?
Nociception, something. I sent the
physiological process through detection of and encoding noxious stimuli, which can be harmful or potentially harmful. It involves specialized sensory neurons called nociceptors, which are activated by mechanical, thermal, or chemical stimuli to send the signals to the central nervous system. This process is distinct from pain, which is subjective to emotional experience that arises from the brain's interpretation of the signals.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a difference between, again, like I could program a robot to like detect when I poke a needle in it and like reflexively pull back or something. But that doesn't mean it's conscious
necessarily.
So I don't know. So it depends. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. So I would say before there being sentience, there is no pain because pain is just the sentient interpretation of noception, right? Now, if you want to say like you believe
So do you
sentience.
think that consciousness, or maybe not necessarily consciousness, but like what differentiates to you pain and nociception? Like what makes one? Is it just the fact that it goes to like some sort of pre-established brain, or you
Okay.
look annoyed?
When I first brought this up, did I literally not describe that exact thing? That I believe, for example, sea cucumbers might have nociception, and they might be able to respond to external stimuli, but that's different than pain because pain requires a subjective experience, right? Pain, we literally said this, it's a tautology. Pain, by definition, is like a subjective experience of like discomfort or whatever. So, in order to have a subjective experience of discomfort, you first have to have a subjective experience.
Meaning as in like requiring a brain in order to do so, then yes, I would agree with you that nociception is different than pain.
Okay. So, like, I don't know, like, when you say, like, you would argue a fetus can feel pain, in order for that to happen, a fetus would have to be sentient. And again, I've never done a deep dive in this personally, but certainly before there's no brain, which is at, like, I think, like, 6 weeks or something is when the brain waves can, like, or the very first, like, electrical signals can be sent or whatever. Certainly prior to that point, there's no sentience. But likely, it's not until the brain is even further developed that there is any type of sentience. I don't think I've seen any serious arguments that it's kind of before 12 weeks, but even that, I think it very likely could be 20 weeks until they're sentient.
Really, I've not thought this argumentation through.
Yeah.
As much as I should have.
But I just want to again. So
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate you putting up with
to be clear, like would you even again? I don't think you would even care. I don't remember how we got on this factual dispute to begin with, because you wouldn't even care based on the definition you gave earlier, at least. If fetuses weren't sentient, you would simply say they're still persons, the same way brain dead people are still persons, and therefore the mother has to be forced. They have to be forced to carry them for 9 months before, I guess at best, they can put them up for adoption and or have to deal with them for the rest of their life. But
I don't believe that a mother necessarily, like, I preferred if the mother obviously was in the life of the baby, but as part of me being pro-life, I guess mother is not necessarily required to take care of the baby if she doesn't want to.
I understand to some extent you care about.
She should have the option to put it up for adoption.
Sure, I understand, and like someone's saying you care about rights, but I'm just saying there is you should consider the cost. Like the cost of the view is you're forcing a woman to carry an unwanted baby for 9 months. That's going to have various. I mean, it's just going to be uncomfortable for those 9 months. It's going to have various like health effects, both in like short, long term. There's like acute. Obviously, abortion has risk too, but there's acute risk with pregnancy of certain diseases and stuff that can affect you. There's long-term risk as well, but I think that's something we should be wary about forcing upon women.
If you consider, I guess, according to your argumentation, that a fetus is a person when they develop a brain, then you should be saying, well, it doesn't necessarily matter what the bodily autonomy is of the woman. But do you think the bodily autonomy of a woman in the rights argument outweighs the right to life, just out of curiosity? Because I would argue that
I don't. So if you're just asking I don't believe in rights, right? So
I meant yeah. Right. Well, you don't believe in like inherent rights, but do you think like the in your utilitarianism, promoting the whatever is the benefits the most amount of people, how does that apply to the bodily autonomy versus like taking care of?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like
argument,
you would just do what has the highest subjective value, but a little more specific, obviously. Like I would say, I mean, the big thing is like if you believe like if you give a woman 12 weeks to get an abortion or whatever, like even if past like some point, they would be forced to carry the pregnancy. Like, that's obviously because like have a consideration for the person at that point, which I think can outweigh the bodily autonomy, but they do have the option to avoid it if they get an abortion earlier on in the pregnancy. So it's not like, obviously, I think most people who get an abortion would have it before 12 weeks, especially before. It's like over 90% of abortions happen before 20 weeks, and I think 20 weeks is a plausible place where fetuses could become sentient. So
there's a guy, Chapringo, in my chat is desperately wanting to end this conversation.
Yeah, we haven't. I was gonna say, we haven't talked for 3 hours. We should end soon.
He wants us to talk about common ground, which is the centrists uniting against the extremists. And,
yeah, we could. I mean,
our respective parties. He's asking, would you rather vote for Vance? Who do we vote for? Vance / Hassan or Shapiro / Shapiro? I don't know what necessarily he.
No, Ben Shapiro and Josh Shapiro. I think I'd vote for.
Oh, Ben Shapiro
versus
Josh
Shapiro.
That's
that. You'd have to. That's not even a question. I would obviously
Vance
vote
versus
for
Hassan is like worse versus worse, and then Shapiro versus Shapiro is sort of like. I guess he's coming from the argument of like.
Wait, are they versus?
Like moderate.
He's saying like they're on the same ticket, like it's.
Or are they on like the same team? Like
Vance it's like Josh Shapiro
Hassan
president, Ben Shapiro vice president. Versus Hassan and Vance, president and vice president.
No, those are the two tickets. Oh, Vance and Hassan versus Shapiro. I do
Shapiro
obviously. Versus Shapiro. That's like a.
That's not even a. The only.
I don't think it would even matter which Shapiro is the president in that situation.
Yeah, it wouldn't. But like the only as far as I know, Josh Shapiro is not like even progressive. I remember because he was a candidate. He was
a Republican who defected to the.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Josh Shapiro, right? Yeah, he's the Republican who defected to the Democratic Party because the Republicans were too busy.
Yeah, so like it wouldn't even be. And Ben Shapiro's like, as much as he like will run defense for Trump because that's kind of where his audience is. I think he personally like is a by today's standards relatively centrist dude. So but maybe okay, the Hassan Vance ticket. Okay, maybe first of all. Be really fun to watch, okay? Maybe from another country, but it would be really fun to watch.
And that's why people voted for Trump, is because they
they were bored. Might also maybe like the vice president doesn't do that much, I guess, but who knows? Maybe they just would not be able to get anything done because they would disagree on everything.
Deciding vote in the Senate, aren't they?
Yeah, but that only matters if it doesn't matter that much sometimes. Like it doesn't matter right now, does it? How many tie-breaking votes does JD Vance cast?
Right now it's like really fucking close. With if they were to do, let's say a Supreme Court justice died, I'm pretty sure the Senate's pretty close.
The Senate is close right now, but I don't know. Like I think JD Vance has cast not that many tie-breaking, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I don't think
53 versus like 47 right now.
But like that, but it has to tie to get to the tie-breaking vote, right? So it can be close, but like, you're not going to tie even if it's that close. You'd have in order for it to tie. Wouldn't it have to?
That's also assuming that every single Republican would vote with the party. I mean, you're starting to see some sort of dissent with.
But like, if you saw dissent, like how would it? Like 53, it's not going to tie at all, right? Because it's an odd number. But like, wouldn't it have to? Like
you have to be a 50-50 vote, and
yeah, which is good. It's going to be hard to get a 50-50 vote, or I don't know how hard, but when it's like 53-47 or whatever.
You just need 3 people to defect from the Republican Party. I don't think it'll be that hard.
But that would, I guess if 3, yeah. And it'd have to be 3 exactly though, yeah. Oh, he did break the exactly. Tie-breaking vote on the big beautiful bill, so there was that.
Someone posted furry vor in my Discord server, and I'm banning them.
But yeah. I mean, obviously, the establishment cucks any day. But
yes.
Okay, just quote unquote closings here, I guess, and then I don't know if there's any.
It's just been a shit show. It was a good
common ground.
Like, as much as this was like a debate, I guess I think this is more of a of a discussion.
Yeah,
Even
for
though
sure.
it's
Yeah.
really more you going after me than anything. We were, at least me personally, my goal with this conversation was, I don't know, to try to get further to some sort of truth and further towards some sort of logical argument. So,
Well, you always get
appreciate
further
you
to the
dealing with
truth
my
when you talk to me, because act utilitarianism mogs, okay? Total hedonic,
yeah, clearly,
act utilitarianism. Abort all the non-vegans. That was a good clip.
I'm gonna clip that. I'm gonna upload it to Shorts. I'm gonna upload it to Twitter. I'm gonna tag you specifically. Every single post you post from now on, there's gonna be a reply. You'll be like, "Oh, who's replied to my post? Oh, at that guy is North on Twitter. Oh, what is he posting? Nonfon clip. Abort all the
Dude,
non-vegans."
have I told you, dude, the best thing Trump has done, okay, has been the renovations at the White House. I don't know about the new renovations for sure. I'd have to look at the land area being covered.
Are you talking about the gold thing?
But
or
so he covered the rose garden and pavement, right? Which reduces the wild habitat for insects, which reduces the future insect population and thereby reduces insect suffering. And the new renovations, the ballroom, I don't know if there's going to be more or less land area covered because he is demolishing part of the east wing.
Have you seen what it looks like, the ballroom renovations? Have you seen the photos?
Yeah.
They're bulldozing fucking part of the White House.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But I don't know. I think more land is going to be covered by the new ballroom, but I don't know for sure. If more land is covered by the ballroom,
more land
insect
is I think it was like an outdoor like patio where it was like a garden or something like that where they held outdoor events, and they're turning that entire area to a ballroom. It's gonna look like shit, but
another Trump W. Insect suffering reduced. He read the blog post. Convert your lawn to a gravel lawn to reduce insect suffering. Let's go. Trump is goated. Best president of my lifetime. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.